Hello guys, welcome to Percy Jackson. So in this video, we will see, what if Percy became the most sought after guy at Kuoh Academy? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The New Tide. The morning sun cast long shadows across Kuoh Academy's pristine campus as Percy Jackson stood at the gates, one hand gripping his worn backpack strap, the other holding a crumpled schedule. Students streamed past him, mostly girls in crisp uniforms, with a smaller number of boys among them, all sneaking glances at the tall newcomer with sea-green eyes. Just like every other first day, Percy muttered to himself, trying to ignore the whispers. Except this time I'm in Japan. No pressure. After the Second Giant War, Percy had needed a change. When his mother mentioned a study abroad program in Japan, he'd jumped at the chance. Annabeth had chosen to stay at Camp Jupiter, working on the temple reconstructions. They'd agreed some time apart might help them both heal from Tartarus. Now, standing before Kuoh Academy, Percy wondered if he'd made the right choice. He took a deep breath, feeling the familiar tug in his gut that told him there was water nearby, a fountain in the courtyard, pipes beneath the ground. Moisture in the air, the sensation grounded him. Whatever weirdness lay ahead, he was still a son of Poseidon. Percy hadn't taken 3 steps onto campus when he felt it, a strange prickling sensation. Like static electricity raising the hair on his arms. Something supernatural was nearby, several somethings, in fact. After years of monster encounters, his instincts had become finely tuned. Kuoh Academy wasn't just a normal school. Great, he sighed, so much for a monster-free semester. The main building loomed ahead, its architecture a blend of traditional Japanese aesthetics and modern design. Percy consulted his schedule again, trying to decipher the room numbers. His dyslexia made the Japanese characters swim before his eyes. You look lost. Percy turned to find a petite girl with short, dark hair and violet eyes studying him with analytical precision. She wore glasses and carried herself with unmistakable authority despite her small stature. The supernatural prickling intensified. That obvious, huh? Percy smiled, shifting his weight. His hand instinctively moved toward his pocket where Riptide rested. I'm new. Percy Jackson, exchange student. Sona Citri, student council president. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You're the American transfer student. Your homeroom is in building 3, second floor. I can show you, if you'd like. Percy hesitated. Whatever she was, she wasn't human, but she wasn't attacking, either. That'd be great, thanks. As they walked, Sona maintained a professional distance. Your transfer paperwork was unusual. Last-minute approvals, missing records. Percy kept his expression neutral. Yeah, my old school had a fire. Records got messed up. The lie came easily after years of improvising explanations for monster attacks. A fire, Sona repeated, clearly not believing him. How unfortunate. They reached the classroom, and Sona paused at the door. The student council office is on the 3rd floor if you need assistance. Kuoh Academy has many traditions and clubs. I recommend you take your time before joining any. Her emphasis wasn't subtle. She knew something was different about him. I'll keep that in mind, Percy replied, meeting her gaze steadily. Thanks for the help, student council president. A flicker of surprise crossed her face at his direct response, but she quickly composed herself. Welcome to Kuoh Academy, Percy Jackson. With a slight bow, she left him at the classroom door. News of the handsome foreign exchange student spread through Kuoh Academy with supernatural speed. By lunchtime, Percy had fielded dozens of questions about America, declined 3 offers to join various clubs, and developed a persistent feeling of being watched. He sat alone under a cherry tree in the courtyard, unwrapping the lunch he'd prepared himself. His mother had insisted he learn to cook before leaving for Japan, and he was grateful now for the familiar taste of his homemade sandwich. Mind if we join you? Percy looked up to see a group approaching, 2 guys and a girl. The speaker was a brown-haired boy with an earnest expression. Sure, Percy shrugged, gesturing to the empty grass around him. I'm Issei Hyodo, the brown-haired boy introduced himself as they sat. This is Matsuda and Motohama. The other boys nodded. We don't usually get many transfer students mid-year, Issei continued. opening his lunch. Especially not guys. Lucky me, Percy said dryly. Is that why everyone keeps staring? The three exchanged glances. Well, hardly. Matsuda adjusted his glasses. Kuoh was an all-girls school until recently. The ratio is still like 4-to-1. Plus, you've got that whole, mysterious foreign guy, vibe going, Motohama added. Girls in class were taking pictures of you during homeroom. Percy groaned. Great. Just what I needed. Issei leaned forward conspiratorially. So, got a girlfriend back in America. Percy's expression clouded momentarily. It's complicated. Memories of Annabeth flickered through his mind. Her fierce gray eyes, the way she always had a plan. We're taking some space right now. That means you're available, Matsuda exclaimed too loudly, drawing stares from nearby students. Percy was about to respond when a chill ran down his spine. His battle instincts kicked in, and he turned to a group of students walking across the courtyard. Leading them was a stunning girl with long crimson hair that seemed to catch the sunlight like flames. Beside her walked a tall, raven-haired beaut. With a gentle smile that somehow felt dangerous. Following them were a petite white-haired girl and a proper-looking blonde boy. The supernatural energy coming from them hit Percy like a wave. Who are they? Percy asked, his voice low. Issei's expression shifted to one of admiration. That's Rias Grimori and her group. The Occult Research Club. The red-haired one is Rias, she's like royalty around here, Motohama explained. The black-haired beauty is Akano Himahima, the school's #1 idol. The blonde guy is Kiba, and the small one is Kaneko. Percy watched as Rias suddenly paused, turning her head to look directly at him. Their eyes met across the courtyard, and Percy felt a strange recognition. Not of her face, but of the power she carried. She wasn't a demigod, wasn't a goddess either. Something else entirely. Rias whispered something to Akano, who also turned to study Percy. Then, to the visible shock of everyone in the courtyard, they changed direction and walked directly toward him. No way, Issei breathed. They never approach people like this. Percy stood up, instinctively squaring his shoulders. After facing down titans and giants, he wasn't easily intimidated. But something about these students set his nerves on edge. Percy Jackson, right? Rias smiled as she approached, her voice musical and confident. I'm Rias Grimori, president of the Occult Research Club. This is Akano Himahima, Yuto Kiba, and Kaneko Tuju. Nice to meet you, Percy replied cautiously. Rias tilted her head slightly, studying him with undisguised curiosity. I hope you're enjoying your first day at Kuoh. It's not every day we get transfer students with such interesting backgrounds. The implication was clear. She sensed something about him too. It's been educational, Percy answered. Maintaining eye contact, he could feel Issei and his friends frozen in shock beside him. If you're interested in learning more about Japanese mythology and folklore, you should visit our club sometime. Rias continued. The old school building, after classes. We'd love to hear about American legends. Percy couldn't help the small smile that tugged at his lips. We're being about as subtle as Zeus during a temper tantrum. I'll think about it, he said. Akano leaned forward slightly, her violet eyes twinkling with mischief. We're particularly interested in stories about the sea. I hear the American coast has fascinating tales. A clear reference to his parentage. Percy's hand twitched toward Riptide again. The sea holds a lot of secrets, he agreed carefully. Not all of them should be disturbed. A flash of respect crossed Rias's face at his veiled warning. Indeed. Well, the invitation stands. Good day, Percy Jackson. As they walked away, Percy sank back to the ground, aware that every eye in the courtyard was now fixed on him. Dude, Issei breathed, eyes wide. Do you know what just happened? Rias Grimori just invited you to their club. No one gets invited to their club. Percy took a bite of his sandwich, trying to appear more relaxed than he felt. Is that a big deal? All three boys stared at him in disbelief. You have no idea, Motohama whispered reverently. This changes everything. By the end of the school day, Percy had become something of a legend himself. The American who'd been personally invited to join the elusive Occult Research Club on his first day. Girls whispered as he passed in the hallways, and even teachers regarded him with new interest. Percy slipped out a side entrance, hoping to avoid further attention. The campus was quieter now as students dispersed to clubs or headed home. He pulled out his phone to check for messages from his mom or Annabeth, nothing yet. The time difference would take some getting used to. He was halfway to the school gates when a scream cut through the air. Percy's head snapped up, his body already moving toward the sound before his mind fully registered what he was doing. Years of training had conditioned him to run toward danger, not away from it. The scream had come from behind the old gymnasium. Percy sprinted around the building, skidding to a halt at the scene before him. A girl, one he recognized from his math class, was backed against the wall, her eyes wide with terror. Looming over her was something that Percy's mind initially registered as definitely not human. It had a vaguely female upper body that transitioned into a grotesque, insectoid lower half with chitinous legs that scraped against the pavement. Its face was distorted, too many eyes and mandibles where a mouth should be. Finally, the creature hissed, its voice grating like nails on a chalkboard. A tasty mortal soul, this academy's protections have weakened enough to let me in. The girl seemed frozen in place, too terrified to scream again. Percy didn't hesitate. He pulled Riptide from his pocket, uncapping it in one fluid motion. The pen expanded into a gleaming 3-foot celestial bronze sword that hummed with power. "Hey, bug face," Percy called out, "pick on someone your own species." The creature whirled around, its multiple eyes blinking in surprise. A demigod. Here, it tilted its head, mandibles clicking. "You smell of the sea, Godling. Far from home, aren't you?" "You have no idea," Percy muttered, circling to draw the monster away from the girl. "Why don't you crawl back to whatever hole you came from?" The creature laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Such arrogance. This territory belongs to neither Olympus nor the underworld. Your father's name means nothing here, son of Poseidon." Percy frowned. This wasn't like fighting the monsters back home. This thing knew what he was but spoke as if they were in a different realm of power altogether. Still, monster or not, it was threatening and innocent. "Last chance to leave peacefully," Percy warned, raising Riptide. The creature's only response was to lunge at him with surprising speed. Its chitinous legs scrabbling across the pavement. Percy sidestepped, bringing Riptide down in an arc that should have cleaved through its shoulder. Instead, the blade met resistance, as if cutting through tough rubber rather than the usual monster dust he expected. The creature shrieked in pain but didn't disintegrate. "What the?" Percy didn't have time to finish as one of its legs slashed toward his face. He ducked and rolled, coming up in a defensive stance. "Your godly weapons are weakened here, demigod," the creature taunted. Different realm, different rules. Percy's mind raced. If Riptide wasn't going to work the same way, he felt the familiar tug in his gut and reached out with his senses. A water main ran beneath the pavement, and sprinklers were installed around the gymnasium's perimeter. With a grunt of effort, Percy focused his power. The ground rumbled, and then the water main beneath them burst upward in a controlled explosion. Water gushed out, swirling around Percy in a miniature hurricane. The creature backed away, hissing in alarm. "Different realm, same ocean," Percy countered, directing a powerful jet of water that slammed into the monster with the force of a fire hose. It flew backward, crashing into the gymnasium wall with a satisfying crunch. Percy advanced, gathering the water around Riptide. The sword began to glow with a blue-green light, the water enhancing its celestial bronze. This time, when he struck, the blade cut deeper, drawing an inhuman screech from the creature. "Impossible," it wailed. "The old powers should not." "I get that a lot," Percy interrupted, spinning to avoid another attack. He channeled more power through the water surrounding him, feeling the familiar burn in his muscles as he pushed his abilities. The water responded, hardening into ice spears that pinned the creature's legs to the ground. With its mobility restricted, Percy moved in for the final blow. He brought Riptide down in a powerful overhead strike, the water-enhanced blade finally cutting through the creature's torso. Instead of dissolving into golden dust like the monsters he was used to, this one crumbled into black ash that scattered in the wind. Percy stood there breathing heavily, the water around him gradually subsiding back into puddles on the ground. He turned to check on the girl, only to find she wasn't alone anymore. Standing beside her, Eyes wide with amazement and calculation, were Rias Grimori and her entire club. On the other side of the courtyard, Sona Citri and several student council members had also appeared. Well, Rias said, breaking the silence. That answers several questions. Percy capped Riptide, the sword shrinking back into a pen. And raises a bunch more, I'm guessing. Indeed. Sona stepped forward, adjusting her glasses. Percy Jackson, I believe we need to have a proper conversation. The girl who had been attacked suddenly slumped forward in a faint. Akano moved quickly to catch her. She'll be fine, Akano assured them, her hands glowing slightly as she touched the girl's forehead. Just shock and a minor memory adjustment. Memory adjustment. Percy tensed, his expression hardening. You're messing with her mind. It's standard procedure for mortals who witness supernatural events, Rias explained. Would you prefer she remembered being attacked by a stray devil and having her worldview shattered? Devil, Percy repeated, the pieces clicking into place. That's what that thing was. Rias and Sona exchanged looks. You didn't know, Sona asked carefully, yet you fought it with considerable skill. I've fought monsters before, Percy said simply. Just not devils. Where I come from, they're different. And where exactly do you come from, Percy Jackson? Rias asked, her blue eyes intense with curiosity. What is a son of Poseidon doing at Kuoh Academy? Percy sighed, running a hand through his damp hair. It's a long story. We have time, Sona replied. And given what just happened, I believe it's one we need to hear. The old school building that housed the Occult Research Club was nothing like Percy expected. From the outside, it appeared abandoned and slightly creepy, exactly what you'd expect from an occult club. Inside, however, it was lavishly furnished with antique furniture, rich carpets, and an atmos. Fear that reminded Percy oddly of the big house at Camp Half-Blood, if the big house had been decorated by someone with unlimited funds and a gothic aesthetic. Percy sat on an ornate couch, acutely aware that he was surrounded by beings that were apparently devils. Rias Grimori sat across from him, while Akano poured tea. Sona Citri and a tall, elegant girl introduced as Tsubaki Shinra stood nearby. The rest of both groups positioned themselves around the room, all eyes on Percy. So, Rias began, accepting a cup of tea from Akano. A son of Poseidon, an actual Greek demigod, and your actual devils, Percy countered. Guess we both have some explaining to do. Rias smiled. Indeed, though I suspect our existence is less surprising to you than yours is to us. The three factions, devils, angels, and fallen angels, have always maintained a presence in this world. We've fought our wars, established our territories, and now maintain an uneasy peace. What's surprising, Sona interjected, is encountering a being from another pantheon entirely. The Greek gods are, well, we were under the impression they had largely withdrawn from direct involvement in human affairs. Percy couldn't help but laugh. Tell them that. My last few years have been nothing but gods, titans, and giants trying to use the mortal world as their battleground. Interest sparked in Rias's eyes. You've fought in divine wars, too. Actually, Percy said, the memories still fresh despite his attempts to move past them. The Titan War and then the Giant War. I was kind of hoping for a break, which is why I came here. Apparently, I have the worst luck in any pantheon. That was no coincidence. Kiba spoke up from where he leaned against a bookcase. Stray devils don't just happen to attack random students. It sensed your divine aura, Rias explained. Just as we did when you arrived this morning. Though I admit, I wasn't certain what you were until we saw you fight. Percy frowned. Divine aura, is that why everyone's been staring at me all day? Akano laughed softly. Not entirely. You are quite handsome, Percy-kun. But yes, you radiate a power that's noticeable to supernatural beings. To ordinary humans, it manifests as a sort of intense charisma. Great, Percy muttered. So much for blending in. If I may, Sona said, stepping closer. How did you come to be in our territory? The boundaries between pantheons are usually quite strict. Percy shrugged. I applied for a study abroad program. My stepdad's a teacher. He helped with the arrangements. I needed some distance from everything back home. A demigod just happened to apply to a school controlled by devil heiresses. Tsubaki asked skeptically. I didn't know that's what you were, Percy pointed out. I still don't really know what that means. Rias set down her teacup. Perhaps some context would help. Sona and I are both high-class devils, heirs to prominent houses in the underworld. Kuoh Academy is under our protection. Part of our territory in the human world. Everyone in this room, except for you, is either a devil or has been reincarnated as one, Sona added. Percy glanced around the room with new understanding. Reincarnated. So you were human once. Kiba nodded. Many of us were. Devils can reincarnate humans with special abilities or potential using a system called evil pieces. Like a chess set, Rias explained. Each piece grants different abilities and roles within a peerage, a devil's personal group of followers. Percy absorbed this information, trying to fit it into his worldview. So you're not, evil, with the pitchforks and corrupting souls. Several of them laughed, though Sona merely adjusted her glasses with a small smile. That's religious propaganda, Akano said lightly. Devils are no more inherently evil than humans. Some are cruel, others kind. We simply have different origins and abilities. We maintain contracts with humans who summon us, Rias continued. Fulfilling wishes in exchange for payment, usually something of personal value rather than souls. Percy leaned back, processing. That's actually not that different from how the gods operate. They're always making deals and using heroes to do their dirty work. And is that what you are? A hero? Rias asked, her eyes studying him intently. Percy tensed at the word. I'm just a guy trying to survive. The hero label comes with too many prophecies and near-death experiences for my taste. Yet you ran toward danger without hesitation, Sona observed. Your combat skills are clearly well developed. 5 years of monster attacks will do that, Percy replied dryly. Tell us about these wars you mentioned, Rias prompted, leaning forward with genuine interest. We've had our own conflicts, but divine wars are something else entirely. Percy hesitated, the memories still raw. It's not really something I like to talk about. A lot of good people died. Friends. He paused, then decided they deserved at least some explanation. The short version is that Kronos, the Titan Lord of Time, tried to rise again and overthrow the gods. Then Gaia, the literal Earth, woke up and tried to destroy everything with her giant children. We stopped them both, but it was costly. The room fell silent as they processed his words. Even Percy was surprised by the respect he saw in their eyes. You've faced primordial beings and survived, Rias said softly. No wonder your aura is so powerful. Which raises an important question, Sona interjected. Your presence here disrupts the balance we've established. While I don't believe you came with harmful intent, your very existence at this academy could attract unwanted attention. Percy straightened. If you're asking me to leave. Not at all, Rias interrupted smoothly. Quite the opposite. In fact, I believe we should offer you protection and alliance. Sona raised an eyebrow. Rias, we should discuss this privately first. There's nothing to discuss, Rias countered. Percy has demonstrated both power and character. He could have ignored that girl's plight, but he didn't. Besides, if word reaches certain factions about a Greek demigod in our territory, they will come for him regardless. Better he be under our official protection. You mean recruit me, Percy clarified, eyes narrowing slightly. Into one of these peerages. That would be the traditional approach, Rias acknowledged. But I suspect the process might not work the same way with someone of divine heritage. At minimum, we should establish a formal alliance. Percy considered this. He'd come to Japan to escape politics and supernatural drama, but it seemed to have found him anyway. Still, having allies WHO understood the supernatural world couldn't hurt, especially in unfamiliar territory. I'm not swearing allegiance to anyone, he said firmly. I've had enough of being used as a pawn by powerful beings. But friendship, alliance, I can work with that. Rias smiled brilliantly. Excellent. Then as of this moment, Percy Jackson is under the protection of House Grimory and House Citri. Sona sighed but nodded in agreement. It seems I'm outvoted. Very well. But Percy, understand that this arrangement comes with responsibilities as well as benefits. You cannot expose our world to humans, and you must respect the treaties between factions. Fair enough, Percy agreed. I've kept the Greek world secret for years. One more pantheon won't be a problem. Wonderful. Akano clapped her hands together. This calls for a proper celebration. Perhaps we should introduce Percy to the rest of the supernatural community at Kuoh. Not so fast, Percy held up his hands. Can we take this one day at a time? I still need to finish unpacking my apartment and, figure out my class schedule. Rias laughed, the sound like musical bells. Of course, we've all been where you are, trying to balance supernatural drama with everyday life. She rose gracefully. For now, rest and recover from your fight. Tomorrow, we can begin introducing you to how our world works. As the meeting dispersed, Akano approached Percy with a mischievous smile. I look forward to learning more about the son of the sea god, she said, her voice carrying a subtle undertone that made Percy blush despite himself. Thanks, he managed, still adjusting to her forward manner. On his way out, Tsubaki fell into step beside him. Her manner was more reserved than the others, but Percy sensed a sharp intelligence behind her composed exterior. You handled yourself well today, she said quietly. Both in battle and in the meeting. Not everyone would be so adaptable. Percy shrugged. When you've been thrown into as many impossible situations as I have, you learn to roll with it. Indeed. She paused at the doorway. A word of advice, Percy Jackson. While Rias and Sona are honorable, not all supernatural beings you'll encounter here will be. Some will see you as a curiosity, others as a threat, and still others as a potential weapon to be used. Story of my life, Percy replied with a wry smile. Perhaps. Tsubaki adjusted her glasses. But you're in a new pantheon now, with rules and dangers you don't yet understand. Proceed with caution. With that cryptic warning, she left him standing at the entrance to the old building. The setting sun casting long shadows across the campus. Percy's apartment was small but functional, located in a building that apparently housed several other Kuoh Academy students. He'd learned that the arrangement had been made by missed manipulations on Chiron's part, with his mother and Paul handling the financial and logistical details. Now, understanding more about Kuoh, he wondered if other forces had guided his placement here as well. He dropped his backpack on the small table and collapsed onto his bed, staring at the ceiling. His ADHD mind raced with everything he'd learned. Devils, angels, fallen angels, an entire supernatural world parallel to but distinct from the Greek one he knew. His phone buzzed with an incoming message. Annabeth, how was your first day? Any monsters yet? Percy smiled despite his exhaustion. She knew him too well. Just one. Not the usual kind though. Apparently this place has devils. Her response came quickly. Devils. Like biblical. Yeah, they run the school. Long story. I'll call tomorrow and explain. Only you, seaweed brain. Stay safe. Percy set the phone down, his thoughts drifting to his conversation with the devils. Their world was both similar to and drastically different from his own. Gods and monsters existed in both, but the rules seemed different here. Riptide hadn't worked the same way against the stray devil, and his own powers had felt, not weaker, but altered somehow, as if adapting to the different pantheon's influence. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Percy tensed, reaching for Riptide as he approached the door cautiously. After the day he'd had, paranoia seemed justified. Who is it? He called. Just a neighbor, came a cheerful male voice. Bringing a welcome gift. Percy opened the door a crack to see Issei Hyodo standing there, holding a small potted plant. Issei. Percy opened the door wider. How did you know where I live? Everyone knows, Issei replied with a shrug. Word travels fast. Plus, I live 2 doors down. Percy accepted the plant awkwardly. Thanks. Come in, I guess. Issei stepped inside, looking around the sparsely decorated apartment. Still settling in, huh? You need any help unpacking? I travel light, Percy said, setting the plant on his windowsill. Is it normal to bring plants as welcome gifts in Japan? No idea. My mom picked it out. Issei scratched the back of his head. Really? I just wanted to talk to you about what happened today. With Rias and the others. Percy tensed. What do you mean? I saw you go into the old school building with them, Issei explained, his expression unusually serious. Look, I don't know what they told you, but, be careful, okay? There's something not normal about that group. For a moment, Percy considered playing dumb, but something in Issei's earnest expression stopped him. You know something about them, don't you? Issei hesitated. Not exactly. Just rumors. Strange things happen around them. Students disappearing, then coming back different. Weird lights in the old building at night. He shrugged. Probably nothing. But you seem like a decent guy. And they don't just invite anyone to join their club. Thanks for the concern, Percy said genuinely. I can take care of myself, but I appreciate the warning. Issei nodded, then his serious expression dissolved into a grin. Plus, man, you're so lucky. Getting to hang out with Rias and Akino. That's every guy's dream at Kuoh. Percy couldn't help but laugh at the sudden shift. Is that right? Absolutely. They're the two great ladies of Kuoh Academy. Perfect beauty, perfect grades, perfect everything. Issei's eyes glazed slightly. If you're going to join their club, you have to tell me what it's like. I'll keep that in mind, Percy promised, amused by Issei's enthusiasm. Thanks for stopping by. After Issei left, Percy returned to his bed, more thoughtful than before. It seemed even ordinary students sensed something unusual about the devil groups. He wondered how many other supernatural beings walked the halls of Kuoh Academy, hiding in plain sight. Just as he was about to call it a night, Percy felt a familiar chill, the same sensation he'd experienced throughout the day when near the devils, but stronger now, more focused. Someone with power was nearby, watching. He moved to the window, scanning the darkened street below. For a moment, he saw nothing. Then, a flash of movement caught his eye, a figure on a nearby rooftop, silhouetted against the moon. Wings extended from its back, not feathered like an angel's but leathery like a bat's. The figure made no aggressive move, merely observing. After a few seconds, it launched into the air and disappeared into the night sky. Percy closed his curtains, his mind racing. He'd attracted attention already, and not just from the devils he'd met. Whatever peaceful respite he'd hoped for at Kuoh Academy, it was clear now that he wouldn't find it. Different pantheon, he muttered to himself, same old demigod luck. The next morning dawned clear and bright, but Percy felt the tension in the air as he approached the academy gates. Students parted before him, whispers following in his wake. Word of his interaction with the Occult Research Club had spread, elevating his status from interesting foreign transfer student to something approaching mythic. There he is, the American who joined the Orc. Did you hear he saved Sake from an attacker yesterday? Rias Grimori personally invited him. Percy kept his head down, trying to ignore the attention. He'd spent years at Camp Half-Blood being the subject of prophecies and whispers. This wasn't much different, except the admirers were mortal teenagers instead of demigods. As he reached his classroom, a delicate hand touched his arm. He turned to find Akino Himahima smiling up at him. Good morning, Percy-kun, she said, her voice carrying just enough to ensure nearby students overheard. Did you sleep well? The hallway immediately fell silent, all eyes turning toward them. Percy could practically feel the jealousy radiating from the male students. Well enough, Percy replied, keeping his voice casual. Everything okay? Rias asked me to remind you about our club meeting after school, Akino continued, her violet eyes twinkling with mischief. She was clearly enjoying the spectacle they were creating. We have so much to show you. Right, Percy nodded. I'll be there. Akino leaned closer, dropping her voice to a whisper only he could hear. Be careful today. We detected unusual activity near the campus boundaries last night. Someone's testing our defenses. Percy thought of the winged figure he'd spotted outside his apartment. I saw something. Someone with wings, watching my apartment. Akino's playful expression faltered briefly. Fallen angel, most likely. I'll tell Rias. She stepped back, summing her cheerful demeanor for their audience. See you this afternoon, Percy-kun. As she glided away, the hallway erupted in excited chatter. Percy sighed and entered his classroom, where Issei and his friends immediately surrounded him. Dude, Issei exclaimed, eyes wide. Akino-senpai personally came to talk to you. It's not a big deal, Percy said, sliding into his seat. Not a big deal. Motohama adjusted his glasses frantically. She called you, Percy-kun. Do you know how many guys would kill for that level of familiarity? Percy was saved from responding by the arrival of their teacher. As the class settled, He noticed Sona Citri's vice president, Tsubaki, watching him from across the room. Her expression was unreadable, but she gave him a slight nod when their eyes met. The morning passed in a blur of unfamiliar subjects and language challenges. Percy's dyslexia made Japanese characters nearly impossible to decipher, but he'd been granted special accommodations, Onyo. Their arrangement he now suspected had supernatural assistance behind it. During lunch, he avoided the courtyard where he'd met Rias the previous day, instead finding a quiet spot on the roof. He needed time to think, to process everything that had happened. Part of him wondered if he should contact Chiron for guidance, but another part, the part that had grown weary of quests and prophecies. The part that had grown weary of quests and prophecies, wanted to handle this on his own. He was 17 now, a veteran of 2 wars. If he couldn't navigate one supernatural high school, what had all that experience been for? Percy unwrapped his lunch, leaning back against the fence that enclosed the roof. The view of Kuoh from here was impressive, the blend of traditional and modern architecture, cherry trees lining the pathways. Students milling about below like colorful ants. Nice spot. Percy didn't jump at the sudden voice. Years of monsters sneaking up on him had cured him of that reflex. He turned to see a petite girl with white hair and expressionless eyes. Kaneko, from Rias's group. It's quiet, Percy agreed, making room as she sat beside him. Not a fan of the attention either. Kaneko unwrapped a lunch box that seemed to consist entirely of sweets. It's annoying. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Percy appreciated her lack of questions or small talk, a rare quality in anyone. Mortal or supernatural, you smell different, Kaneko finally said, her blunt observation catching Percy off guard. Thanks. Not like a devil, not like an angel, something else. She took another bite of cake. Older. Percy considered this. I guess demigods would have a different scent than devils. Where I come from, monsters can track us by smell. Kaneko nodded. Here too. You should be careful. Quote, so people keep telling me. Because it's true. She stood up, brushing crumbs from her uniform. That devil you killed wasn't alone. Others will come. Stronger ones. Percy frowned. Was it part of a group? No. But word spreads. Kaneko's expression remained neutral, but her eyes held surprising intensity. You're new, powerful, unknown. That makes you interesting. And dangerous. Percy finished for her. Yes. She turned to leave, then paused. I was new once too. Rias helped me. She'll help you if you let her. Before Percy could respond, the roof door opened again and 2 second-year girls appeared, their excited chatter cutting off abruptly when they spotted Percy and Kaneko. Oh, we're sorry, we didn't know anyone was up here, one stammered. Eyes wide as she recognized them. We were just leaving, Kaneko said flatly, walking past them. Percy gathered his things, offering the girls a polite nod as he followed. Their whisper resumed the moment the door closed behind him. Is it always like this? He asked Kaneko as they descended the stairs. The staring, the gossip. She shrugged. You get used to it. Somehow. Percy doubted that. The afternoon classes dragged, Percy's ADHD making it nearly impossible to focus on lectures about Japanese history and literature. His mind kept drifting to the devil he'd fought, to the winged observer outside his window, to the strange new world he'd stumbled into. When the final bell rang, he gathered his books, mentally preparing for the meeting with the Occult Research Club. He'd barely stepped into the hallway when he felt a presence beside him. Kiba, the blonde prince of Kuoh Academy, according to the whispers. Rias sent me to escort you, Kiba explained with a friendly smile. We sometimes take alternative routes to the club room. Alternative routes. Percy raised an eyebrow. Kiba's smile widened. It's easier to show you. They exited the main building. But instead of heading toward the old school building where Percy had met with the devils the previous day, Kiba led him to a secluded area behind the gymnasium. We maintain a barrier around the school, Kiba explained as they walked. But we also have more direct methods of travel for club members. It helps avoid unwanted attention. He stopped in front of what appeared to be an ordinary maintenance shed. Placing his hand on the door, Kiba murmured something under his breath. A faint crimson glow emanated from his palm, and when he opened the door, Percy saw not the expected tools and equipment but a swirling portal of dark energy. A teleportation circle, Kuoh said, gesturing for Percy to enter. Perfectly safe. Percy hesitated, remembering his disastrous experiences with divine travel methods. Last time I tried something like this, I nearly threw up on a goddess. My body doesn't always react well to magical transportation. Kuoh considered this. It's different from divine teleportation. Devil magic operates on different principles. He paused. But if you'd prefer to walk. No, let's try it, Percy decided. If he was going to navigate this new world, he needed to understand how it worked. Just stand clear when we arrive. Stepping through the portal felt like passing through a cold waterfall, a momentary pressure and chill, then nothing. His stomach lurched, but not as severely as he'd expected. When his vision cleared, he found himself standing in the ornate clubroom where they'd met the previous day. Rias sat behind an antique desk, while Akano arranged tea on a serving cart. Kaneko perched on a couch, already working her way through a plate of cookies. Ah, Percy, right on time, Rias greeted him warmly. How was your first full day at Kuoh? Interesting, Percy replied, taking the seat she indicated. Everyone keeps staring at me like I'm some kind of celebrity. Akano laughed softly as she handed him a cup of tea. That's because you are now the mysterious transfer student who's caught the attention of both Rias Grimori and Sona Citri. It's unprecedented. Speaking of unprecedented, Rias interjected, her expression growing more serious. Akano mentioned you saw someone watching your apartment last night. A fallen angel, most likely. Percy nodded. Bat-like wings, watching from a rooftop. We've confirmed unusual activity around the town's borders. Kuoh added, taking his own seat. Someone's been testing the wards we maintain. Which brings us to the purpose of this meeting, Rias said. Percy, now that you've had time to process, we need to discuss what your presence here means for the balance of power in Kuoh. Percy set down his teacup. I told you yesterday, I didn't come here looking for trouble. Rubel has a way of finding those with power, regardless of their intentions, Rias replied. You carry the blood of a sea god, a pantheon entirely separate from our own. That makes you unique in this territory, and potentially valuable to various factions. Or dangerous, Percy pointed out. Or both, Rias agreed. The three factions, devils, angels, and fallen angels, maintain an uneasy peace. Your presence complicates things. Because I don't fit into your categories, Percy realized. Precisely. You're not bound by our treaties or allegiances. Rias leaned forward, which is why we need to establish where you stand. Percy frowned. I already told you, I'm not swearing allegiance to anyone. And we respect that, Akano assured him. But there are other ways to formalize an alliance. Ways that protect both you and us. Quote, such as. Rias exchanged glances with her peerage before continuing. As high-class devils, Sona and I have certain diplomatic privileges. We can design 8 individuals as protected allies without requiring them to join our peerages. Like diplomatic immunity, Percy said, understanding dawning. But for the supernatural world, something like that, Rias nodded. It would signal to other factions that you're under our protection without claiming ownership over you. Percy considered this. The arrangement sounded reasonable, better than being on his own in unfamiliar territory. What would I have to do? A simple ritual, Rias explained. Nothing binding to your soul or free will, just a formal recognition of our alliance. It would grant you access to our territories and resources, and in exchange, you would agree to respect our customs and assist in defending Kuoh if necessary. Defending against what, exactly? Stray devils, for one, Kuoh replied. Like the one you encountered yesterday. They're devils who have abandoned or been exiled from their masters, often going rogue and attacking humans. There are also fallen else who might see Kuoh as tempting territory, Akano added, a strange edge entering her voice. And various yokai and other supernatural entities native to Japan. Percy thought it over. The arrangement wasn't so different from the alliances he'd formed back home, with Camp Jupiter, with various gods and their children. A partnership of equals rather than servitude. All right, he finally said. I'm in, but I reserve the right to handle things my way if it comes to a fight. Rias smiled brilliantly. Wonderful. We'll inform Sona and prepare the ritual for tomorrow night. One more thing, Percy added. I need to understand how this world works. The rules seem different here. My sword didn't work the same way against that devil as it does against monsters back home. An astute observation, Rias nodded. Different pantheons operate under different metaphysical principles. Your divine weapon, Riptide, Percy supplied. Riptide, Rias continued, was forged to combat Greek monsters. It naturally functions differently against beings from our pantheon. As for your own powers, she studied him thoughtfully. They seemed quite effective, from what we observed. They worked, but they felt different. Like I was channeling the water through a filter. Akino nodded understanding. The divine energy flows differently here. You're connected to a Greek god, but you're operate in a realm influenced primarily by Judeo-Christian and Japanese mythic forces. It creates a sort of interference. Great, Percy sighed. So I'm at a disadvantage. Not necessarily, Kiba interjected. Just different. Your opponents will be equally unfamiliar with your abilities, which gives you an element of surprise. We can help you adapt, Rias assured him. Train with you to understand how your powers manifest in our world. She smiled. Consider it part of our alliance. Before Percy could respond, the clubroom door burst open. Issei Hyodo stood in the doorway, breathing heavily as if he'd run the entire way. Bushu, he exclaimed, using the Japanese term for club president. There's. He stopped abruptly, noticing Percy. His eyes widened in surprise. Percy, what are you doing here? Issei. Rias stood, concern crossing her face. What's happened? Issei hesitated, glancing between Percy and the devils. There's been an attack. Near the park. A student. He swallowed hard. They're saying it's a murder. The room fell silent. Rias's expression hardened. Who? She asked quietly. Amano Yuma. Issei replied, his voice cracking slightly. We went on a date yesterday and now they're saying she's. Percy watched confusion cross the faces of the Occult Research Club members. They exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Issei, Akino said gently. Who is Amano Yuma? Issei stared at her in disbelief. What do you mean? She's a third year. I've been talking about her for weeks. We finally went out yesterday. And now, there is no student named Amano Yuma at Kuoh Academy, Rias said firmly. But that's impossible. Issei's protest cut off as he doubled over suddenly, clutching his chest. What's happening? Percy was on his feet instantly, moving to Issei's side as the boy collapsed to his knees. Through his t-shirt, Percy could see a faint red glow emanating from Issei's chest. Rias, Akino said urgently. That light. I see it, Rias replied, her voice tight with sudden tension. Akino, prepare a barrier. Kiba, Kaneko, secure the perimeter. No one enters or leaves. As the others sprang into action, Rias knelt beside Issei, who had fallen unconscious. She pulled aside his shirt, revealing what appeared to be a glowing wound in his chest, not bleeding, but pulsing with unnatural crimson light. What's happening to him? Percy demanded, his hand instinctively moving to Riptide. Rias's expression was grim. He's been attacked by a fallen angel. This wound was made by a light spear, fatal to humans and especially to devils. Can you help him? Rias met Percy's eyes, a calculating look crossing her face. Yes, but it will change him forever. She hesitated. Percy, what I'm about to do, it's not something we reveal to outsiders. I'm not exactly a normal outsider, Percy pointed out. And he needs help now. Rias nodded, decision made. She placed her hand over Issei's wound, a magic circle appearing beneath them. Rias Grimori, claim this soul. As she continued the incantation, Percy watched in fascination as A.C. Hess piece, a red pawn, materialized above Issei's body, glowing with the same crimson energy as Rias's magic circle. The piece slowly descended into Issei's chest, merging with his body. The wound began to close, the unnatural light fading. An evil piece, Percy realized, remembering their explanation from the previous day. You're making him a devil. It was the only way to save him, Rias replied, her voice slightly defensive. The fallen angel who did this, Amano Yuma, clearly targeted him specifically. The question is why. Percy looked down at Issei's unconscious form. The boy seemed peaceful now. The pain gone from his features. You said there's no student by that name. Because there isn't, Akeno confirmed, returning from setting up the barrier. She must have been using an alias. Manipulating his memories to create a false relationship. A fallen angel specifically targeting an ordinary human student, Kiba mused, rejoining them. It's unprecedented. Perhaps not so ordinary after all. Rias said thoughtfully. The evil piece responded unusually strongly. There's something special about him. Percy frowned. Is that why you saved him? Because he's useful. Rias met his gaze steadily. I saved him because he's a student of Kuoh Academy and under my protection. His potential is secondary. Kaneko, who had been silent throughout the exchange, suddenly tensed. Someone's coming. Percy felt it too, a prickle of supernatural energy approaching rapidly. Stronger than the stray devil he'd faced, more focused. Fallen angel, Akeno confirmed, her playful demeanor completely gone now. Replaced by cold focus. Powerful one. They're coming to finish the job, Rias surmised. Akeno, transport Issei to my residence. Kiba, Kaneko, with me. What about me? Percy asked. Rias hesitated. This isn't your fight, Percy. Our alliance isn't yet formalized. You have no obligation to involve yourself. Percy uncapped Riptide, the celestial bronze sword expanding to its full length. I make my own obligations. Besides, I've been itching for a real fight since I got here. A slow smile spread across Rias's face. Very well, let's introduce ourselves properly to our uninvited guest. They met the fallen angel on the school roof, a dramatic setting that Percy might have appreciated under different circumstances. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the campus and painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Their opponent hovered above them, 12 black wings extended behind him in an impressive display. He was tall and powerfully built, with sharp features and eyes that glowed with malevolence. His attire was formal, a dark suit that seemed at odds with the otherworldliness of his wings. Rias Grimori, he greeted, his voice deep and resonant. This is unexpected. I was under the impression that our little game of cat and mouse would remain between my subordinate and the boy. When you target a student under my protection, Kokobile, you make it my business. Rias replied coolly. Why are you hunting Issei Hyodo? Percy tensed at the name. Kokobile. The fallen angel seemed to radiate power in a way that reminded Percy of the gods. Not quite as overwhelming as Zeus or Poseidon, but certainly beyond anything he'd faced since arriving in Japan. Kokobile's gaze shifted to Percy, eyes narrowing with interest. And what's this? A new pet, Grimori? No. He inhaled deeply, as if tasting the air. Something else entirely. Divine blood, but not of our pantheon. His smile widened. How fascinating. I'm not a pet, Percy said evenly. Riptide held ready at his side. And you still haven't answered the question. Why attack an ordinary student? Kokobile laughed. Ordinary, is that what you think he is? He descended slightly, though still remained out of immediate striking distance. The boy possesses something of great value. Something that could shift the balance of power between the three factions. A sacred gear, Rias realized. Her eyes widening slightly. Indeed, Kokobile's gaze returned to her. One with significant potential. My subordinate was to eliminate him before that potential could be realized. An elegant solution, until you interfered. By reincarnating him as a devil, Percy concluded. That's why you're here now. To finish what your subordinate started. Clever for a foreign godling, Kokobile acknowledged. Yes, the boy must die before he learns to harness his power. And now, it seems, so must you all. His expression hardened. This territory has been contested for too long. Perhaps it's time for a more definitive claim. Power gathered around Kokobile, light condensing in his palm to form a glowing spear. The energy radiating from it made Percy's skin CRAWL. Not divine in the way he understood it, but something else, equally dangerous. Percy, Rias said quietly, crimson energy beginning to swirl around her own hands. Fallen angel light spears are particularly dangerous to beings with divine blood. Be careful. Now she tells me, Percy muttered. Kokobile struck first, hurling the spear not at Rias but at Percy, clearly identifying him as the unknown variable. Percy sidestepped. the spear grazing his shoulder as it passed. Even that slight contact sent pain lancing through his arm, like acid burning his skin. Before he could recover, Kuoh formed 2 more spears, launching them in rapid succession. This time, Kuoh intercepted one, moving with inhuman speed, while Kaneko simply caught the other bare-handed and shattered it with a squeeze of her fist. Impressive reflexes, Kuoh noted, but mere parlor tricks compared to this. He raised his arms, and dozens of light spears materialized in the air around him, pointing downward like a deadly rain about to fall. Scatter, Rias commanded, just as the barrage was released. Percy didn't need to be told twice. He rolled to the side, bringing Riptide up to deflect several spears. The celestial bronze connected with the light energy, causing a sizzling reaction that sent sparks flying. Each impact sent vibrations up his arm, but the sword held. Rias unleashed her own CK, balls of crimson destruction energy that hurtled toward Kuoh. The fallen angel dodged most, but one caught his wing, singeing the feathers. He snarled in anger. "You've grown stronger, little Grimoire," he acknowledged. But still a child playing at power. Percy used the distraction to analyze the battlefield. Kuoh was moving with blinding speed, summoning swords from nowhere to counter the light spears. Kaneko, despite her small stature, was demonstrating incredible strength and durability. Rias maintained her distance, launching energy attacks with precision. But Kuoh was holding back. Percy could sense it. The fallen angel was testing them, measuring their capabilities. Time to change the dynamics. Percy reached out with his senses, feeling for water. The school's pipes ran beneath them, and the air held moisture he could use. Concentrating, he pulled at that moisture, drawing it toward him in a swirling mist that quickly expanded across the rooftop. Kuoh's eyes narrowed as visibility decreased. A clever trick, Godeling. But light cuts through even the thickest fog. He created another spear, this one larger than the others, and thrust it downward with tremendous force. The light energy dispersed some of the mist, but Percy had already moved, using the water particles to enhance his own mobility. He appeared behind Kuoh, Riptide swinging in an arc aimed at the fallen angel's wings. Kuoh sensed him at the last second and twisted away, but not before the celestial bronze blade sliced through one of his smaller wings. Black feathers exploded outward, and Kuoh roared in pain and outrage. "You dare!" The water responding to Percy's call surged upward, forming into ice spears that launched toward the fallen angel from multiple directions. Simultaneously, Rias released another barrage of destruction energy, while Kuoh and Kaneko moved to flank their opponent. Kuoh's wings beat powerfully, creating a shockwave that disrupted Percy's ice spears and knocked Kuoh backward. But he couldn't avoid Rias's attack or Kaneko, who had leapt an impossible distance to deliver a devastating punch to his side. The fallen angel crashed onto the rooftop, creating a small crater in the concrete. But he was far from defeated. Rising to his feet, fury evident in his glowing eyes, he spread his wings to their full span. "Enough games," he snarled. "I came for the boy. But I'll settle for eliminating all of you." Light began to gather around him, more intense than before, forming not just spears but a sphere of pure energy that expanded outward. "He's creating a detonation field," Rias warned, her voice tight. "If it reaches full power." "It won't," Percy interrupted. Drawing on his deepest reserves, he pulled at all the water within reach, from pipes, from the air, from the ground itself. The effort made his muscles burn and his head pound, but the response was immediate and powerful. Water erupted from the rooftop access points, from the edges of the building, spiraling upward to form a massive column around Kuoh. The fallen angel's concentration faltered as he found himself engulfed. "Now!" Percy shouted through gritted teeth. Rias didn't hesitate. She unleashed her most powerful attack yet, a concentrated beam of destruction magic that pierced through Percy's water barrier and struck Kuoh directly in the chest. The resulting explosion sent them all staggering backward. When the water and debris settled, Kuoh remained standing, wounded but far from defeated. His suit was torn, one wing hung at an awkward angle, and a burn mark marred his chest where Rias's attack had hit. "Impressive teamwork," he acknowledged, his voice rougher now. "Perhaps I underestimated you. You should leave while you still can," Rias advised. Though she looked nearly as drained as Percy felt. This territory is protected by both House Grimori and House Citri. Your presence here violates our treaties. Kokobel laughed, the sound bitter. Treaties. The old accords are meaningless. War is coming, little devil. Sooner than you think. His gaze shifted to Percy. And you, son of the sea god, you've chosen the row. Ing allies in a world you don't understand. Percy raised Riptide, though his arms felt like lead. I understand enough. You attacked an innocent kid. That puts you on my bad side regardless of which pantheon you're from. For a moment, it seemed Kokobel might attack again. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. Perhaps there's more to you than divine heritage. We'll meet again, Perseus Jackson. Count on it. With a powerful beat of his wings, Kokobel launched into the darkening sky. They watched as his form grew smaller, eventually disappearing among the clouds. Rias released a shaky breath. That could have gone worse. Or better, Heba added, nursing a burn on his arm where a light spear had grazed him. He knows my name, Percy realized. My full name. I never told him that. Rias's expression grew serious. That's troubling. It means he's been gathering information on you specifically. But why? Kaneko asked, the rare question from her highlighting the significance. I think, Rias said slowly, that the appearance of a Greek demigod in Devil territory might be more significant than we initially assumed. She turned to Percy. Kokobel is not a minor player. He's one of the leaders of the Grigori, the organization of fallen angels. His interest in you suggests larger implications. Percy capped Riptide, returning it to pen form. The fight had drained him more than he'd expected. Using his water powers in this different pantheon seemed to require greater effort. So much for keeping a low profile, he said wryly. What about Issei? Is he safe? Akeno will have taken him to my family's residence in the human world, Rias assured him. He'll be protected there until he awakens. And when he does, Percy pressed. You said becoming a devil changes someone forever. Rias met his gaze steadily. It gives them a second chance at life. Issei was dead, Percy, or would have been within minutes. I didn't force this on him. I offered his dying soul a choice, and he accepted. Percy nodded, understanding the impossible situation she'd faced. Hadn't he made similar choices during the wars? Trading one fate for another, sometimes with consequences that couldn't be fully explained beforehand. We should return to base, Heba suggested, looking around at the destroyed rooftop. And perhaps find a way to explain this damage. Rias waved a hand dismissively. I'll have it repaired before morning. Advantage of devil magic. She turned to Percy. You fought well today. Most beings from other pantheons wouldn't have adapted so quickly to our type of combat. I've had practice improvising, Percy replied, the exhaustion finally catching up with him. His knees buckled slightly, and he had to catch himself on a nearby wall. You've overextended, Rias observed. Using divine powers in our realm requires more energy. You need rest. Percy wanted to argue, but the black spots dancing at the edges of his vision suggested she was right. Fine, but tomorrow, I want answers. About Issei, about this sacred gear thing Kokobel mentioned, and about why a fallen angel leader is suddenly interested in Kuoh Academy. Rias nodded. You'll have them. For now, let's get you home. As they created a transportation circle to return to the club room, Percy couldn't shake the feeling that his hope for a peaceful study abroad experience had just vanished completely. Once again, he'd been pulled into a supernatural conflict with stakes he didn't fully understand. Some things, it seemed, remained consistent across pantheons. Percy dreamed of the sea. He stood on a beach he didn't recognize. Waves lapping gently at the shore. The water was clear blue-green, stretching to the horizon where it met an impossibly blue sky. There was no one else in sight, just sand, sea, and sky. Hello, Perseus. Percy turned to find a woman standing beside him. She appeared in her late 30s, with auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her eyes, however, were ancient, silvery yellow like the moon, filled with knowledge and power that belied her physical appearance. A silver bow was slung across her back. Lady Artemis, Percy bowed slightly, recogni. Zing the goddess instantly despite her older form. She usually appeared as a 12-year-old girl when leading her hunters. Walk with me, she said, not a request but a command. They moved along the shoreline. leaving footprints that the waves quickly erased behind them. Percy waited, knowing better than to rush a goddess. "You've crossed boundaries, Percy Jackson," Artemis finally said. "Boundaries that few beings can traverse." "I just applied for a study abroad program," Percy protested. "I didn't know that you were entering the domain of another pantheon." Artemis raised an eyebrow. "Perhaps not consciously, but you've always had an instinct for finding trouble." Percy couldn't argue with that. "Is that why you're here? To warn me away?" Artemis studied the horizon, her expression unreadable. "The Greek gods have limited influence in these realms. Different rules apply, different powers hold sway. I've noticed," Percy said dryly, remembering how his powers had felt strained during the fight with Kuoh. "Yet you've already aligned yourself with one faction," Artemis continued. "The Devils of Kuoh." Percy tensed. "They helped me. I helped them. It's not an oath of allegiance, isn't it?" Artemis stopped, turning to face him fully. "Alliances with beings of other pantheons are complicated. Especially now." "Why especially now?" The goddess's expression grew more serious. "The barriers between divine realms have been thinning since Gaia's defeat. Your presence in Devil territory has accelerated that process locally. It draws attention, not just from the three factions you've encountered, but from others as well." Percy frowned. "Others?" "Gods and monsters from many pantheons sense the weakening boundaries. Some will seek to exploit them. Others will try to repair them." Artemis gazed at him intently. "Your power, Percy Jackson, acts as both a beacon and a key in this process." "Great," Percy muttered. "So my being here is causing problems again." "I didn't say that," Artemis corrected. "I said it accelerates existing processes. Whether that's problematic depends on how you handle what comes next." "Which will be what, exactly?" Artemis's lips curved in a slight smile. "That would be telling. Gods aren't supposed to interfere directly in the affairs of other pantheons. This dream conversation stretches those rules already." Percy sighed. "Cryptic warnings were standard fare from the gods. So why are you here?" "Just to let me know I'm in trouble. I'm here to remind you of who you are," Artemis replied, her tone softening slightly. "Son of Poseidon, hero of Olympus, bearer of the curse of Achilles, once. You've faced gods, titans, and giants. You held the sky on your shoulders. You survived Tartarus. Not experiences I'm eager to repeat." Percy pointed out. "Perhaps not, but they shaped you." Artemis gestured to the sea beside them. "Your father's domain remains a source of strength, even here. Remember that when the waters grow rough." The dream began to fade, the beach dissolving into mist. Artemis's form became translucent, but her voice remained clear. "One more thing, Perseus. The boy your new allies saved, the one with the sacred gear. His power has drawn attention from multiple pantheons, including ours." "What? Why would Greek gods care about Ise?" Artemis's voice grew distant as the dream continued to fade. "Because some sacred gears contain powers older than the distinctions between pantheons. Watch him carefully. His awakening will draw others to Kuoh, beings far more dangerous than Kuoh." "Wait," Percy called. "What do you mean? What beings?" But Artemis was gone, and the dream dissolved completely, leaving Percy in darkness. He woke with a start, sitting upright in his bed, breathing heavily. Pale morning light filtered through his curtains, suggesting it was just after dawn. Percy rubbed his face, the dream still vivid in his mind. A warning from Artemis herself. That was serious. The goddess rarely involved herself in the affairs of male heroes unless the situation was dire. Percy reached for his phone, checking for messages. There was one from Rias, sent late last night. "Ise is stable but still unconscious. Meet at the club after school tomorrow. Rest well." He set the phone down, considering his next move. The dream suggested that his presence in Kuoh was causing more disruption than he'd realized, accelerating some process involving weakening barriers between pantheons. And Artemis had specifically mentioned Ise's sacred gear, whatever that was. After a quick shower and breakfast, Percy headed to school early. He needed to speak with Rias before classes began. The campus was quiet, with only a few early arrivals preparing club rooms or finishing homework. Percy made his way to the old school building, half expecting to find it locked. Instead, he sensed a presence inside, not Rias, but familiar nonetheless. "Tsubaki," he called, entering the main hall. The vice president of the student council appeared at the top of the stairs, her expression as composed as ever. Percy Jackson, you're here early. I need to speak with Rias. It's important. Tsubaki adjusted her glasses. Rias is currently at her residence, tending to Issei Hyodo. I was just checking the barriers after yesterday's incident. Percy hesitated, then decided to trust his instincts. I received a message from my pantheon. That got her attention. Tsubaki descended the stairs, her manner more alert now. A direct communication. From whom? Artemis, goddess of the hunt, the moon, and a dozen other things. She came to me in a dream. A dream-walking deity, Tsubaki murmured. Impressive. Such communication across pantheon boundaries requires significant power. She studied him with new interest. What did she tell you? Percy summarized the dream, watching Tsubaki's expression grow increasingly concerned. When he men, Tian Issei's sacred gear drawing attention from multiple pantheons, Tsubaki's normally impassive face showed clear alarm. This confirms Kaichu's suspicions, she said quietly. Kaichu, Sona Citri, the student council president. Tsubaki clarified. She theorized that the unusual concentration of powerful beings at Kuoh was not coincidental. If your goddess has noticed as well, then it's serious, Percy finished for her. What exactly is a sacred gear? Kokubile mentioned it, and now Artemis. Tsubaki glanced around, as if checking for eavesdroppers, before responding. Sacred Jade. Ours are powerful artifacts created by the biblical god, given to humans to level the playing field against supernatural threats. They take many forms, with varying abilities. Some are relatively common, while others, the Longinus class, have the potential to kill gods. Percy's eyes widened. And Issei has one of these. Which one? We don't know yet. He hasn't awakened to its power. Tsubaki's gaze was piercing. But if your goddess specifically mentioned it, the implications are concerning. Sacred gears are not part of the Greek pantheon's domain. She said something about them containing powers older than the distinctions between pantheons, Percy recalled. Tsubaki went very still. That is not information we possess. You should tell Rias immediately. Before Percy could respond, the building's main door opened. Akino entered, looking surprised to find them there. Percy-kun, Tsubaki-san, you're both here early. Percy received a divine communication from his pantheon, Tsubaki explained without preamble. Regarding Issei's sacred gear, Akino's playful demeanor vanished instantly. I see. Bushu will want to hear this. She's on her way. Issei woke up about an hour ago. Already? Tsubaki raised an eyebrow. That's unusually quick for a new reincarnation. Indeed, Akino agreed, especially considering the severity of his wounds. It seems Rias's theory about his potential was correct. Percy felt a twinge of impatience. Can someone please explain what's going on? I've been thrown into the middle of what sounds like an interpantheon incident, and I'd like to know why. Akino's expression softened slightly. You're right, Percy-kun. You deserve answers. She gestured toward the stairs. Let's go to the club room. Rias will be here soon with Issei, and we can explain everything properly. As they climbed the stairs, Percy noticed subtle changes in the building. Reinforced barriers that shimmered faintly to his enhanced perception, new symbols etched into doorframes. A general sense of heightened security. You're preparing for something, he observed. After Kokubile's attack, it would be foolish not to, Akino replied. Though I suspect only seeing the beginning of what's to come. The club room had been restored to its pristine condition, with no evidence of the previous day's events. Akino busied herself preparing tea, while Tsubaki took up a position by the window, gazing out at the campus with a watchful eye. They didn't have to wait long. Minutes later, the door opened to reveal Rias, followed by a bewildered-looking Issei. Percy was struck by how normal Issei appeared. No visible changes despite his transformation into a devil. The only difference was a certain wariness in his eyes, the look of someone whose worldview had been fundamentally altered. Percy, Issei exclaimed upon seeing him. You're involved in this too. You could say that, Percy replied, studying his classmate carefully. According to Artemis, Issei's power had drawn attention from multiple pantheons, yet he looked like the same awkward teenager Percy had met on his first day. Rias took her seat behind the desk, gesturing for Issei to sit as well. I see we're having an early meeting. Tsubaki, I wasn't expecting you. Percy brought concerning news, Tsubaki explained. I was here checking the barriers when he arrived. Rias's eyes sharpened with interest. What news? Percy recounted his dream once more, this time including every detail he could remember of Artemis's warning. When he finished, a heavy silence fell over the room. This changes things, Rias finally said, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. A direct communication from a major deity of another pantheon. It suggests the situation is more significant than we realized. Can someone explain what's going on? Issei interrupted, raising his hand hesitantly. Bushu told me I'm a devil now, which is a lot to process. But now you're talking about Greek gods and gear and stuff. Percy felt a stab of sympathy for Issei. He remembered his own confusion after learning he was a demigod, the disbelief, the questions, the sudden reshaping of reality around impossible truths. You were attacked by a fallen angel, Rias began gently. A being named Rainer, who was disguising herself as a student named Amano Yuma. She killed you, Issei. The wound was fatal. Issei paled, one hand unconsciously moving to his chest where the light spear had pierced him. I used an evil piece, specifically, a pawn, to reincarnate you as a devil in my peerage, Rias continued. It saved your life, but it also changed your nature. You're no longer human, Issei. So I'm like, immortal now? Issei asked, a hint of his usual personality breaking through the shock. Not exactly, Akeno clarified. Devils live much longer than humans, but we can be killed. Especially by holy or light-based weapons, like the spear that struck you. Why me, though? Issei looked genuinely bewildered. I'm nobody special. That's where you're wrong, Rias said, leaning forward. You possess a sacred gear, a powerful tool created by the biblical god and implanted in certain humans. The fallen angels sensed this potential in you and sought to eliminate you before you could awaken to your power. Issei stared at his hands as if expecting to see something unusual. I don't feel different. The power lies dormant until activated, Rias explained. Usually triggered by strong emotion or danger. Percy cleared his throat. According to Artemis, his sacred gear is drawing attention from multiple pantheons, not just the three factions. She said it contains powers older than the distinctions between pantheons. Which raises the question, Tsubaki interjected, of exactly which sacred gear Issei possesses. All eyes turned to Rias, who sighed. I have a theory, but it's unprecedented. If I'm right, Issei may possess one of the 13 Longinus, specifically, the boosted gear. The name clearly meant something to the others, as both Akeno and Tsubaki stiffened in surprise. The Red Dragon Emperor, Akeno whispered, looking at Issei with new assessment. Wait, dragon? Percy and Issei asked simultaneously. Rias nodded. The boosted gear contains the spirit of Didraig, the Welsh dragon, one of the two heavenly dragons. It has the power to double the user's strength every 10 seconds indefinitely. Theoretically, with enough time, its wielder could challenge gods. That's a lot of power for one person, Percy noted, thinking of the godly weapons he'd encountered in his world. None had quite that potential. Indeed, Rias agreed. If I'm correct, and your goddess's warning suggests I am, then Issei possesses one of the most dangerous sacred gears in existence. One coveted by all factions. Issei looked overwhelmed. So I have a dragon inside me. How do I? Use it. We'll train you, Rias assured him. But first, we need to confirm its presence. She turned to Percy. This is where your information becomes particularly valuable. If the boosted gear contains power that predates pantheon distinctions, it might explain why a Greek goddess would take interest. Dragons existed before the current divine order, Tsubaki explained, seeing Percy's confusion. They're primordial beings, in a sense. Different pantheons have their own dragon lore, but some theorize that the most powerful dragons transcend these boundaries. Like Typhon in my world, Percy realized. A monster so powerful even the gods feared it. Exactly, Rias nodded. If Issei truly possesses the boosted gear, and if Artemis is correct about its nature, then what we're facing is not merely a conflict between devils and fallen angels, but something that could draw in beings from multiple mythologies. Great, Percy muttered. Just what I needed. Another apocalyptic scenario. Issei looked back and forth between them, his expression shifting from confusion to determination. So how do I activate this thing? If it's as powerful as you say, shouldn't we figure out how to use it before these other pantheons come looking for me? Rias smiled. An excellent point, Issei. And precisely what we intend to do. She stood up. Classes will be starting soon. For now, we all maintain our regular schedules to avoid drawing attention. After school, we meet here for training, both for Issei to awaken his sacred gear, and for Percy to better understand how his demigod powers function in our realm. What about Kuoh? Percy asked. He seemed pretty intent on eliminating Issei. He's not going to just give up. No, he won't, Rias acknowledged. But he'll need time to recover from yesterday's battle and to reassess his strategy. That gives us a window to prepare. And Sona, she should know about this, Tsubaki pointed out. I'll brief her during lunch, Rias agreed. For now, we proceed cautiously. No one discusses any of this outside this room. Understood. Everyone nodded their agreement. As they prepared to leave for classes, Issei fell into step beside Percy. So you're a demigod, huh? Like, half god, half human. Percy nodded. Son of Poseidon, god of the sea, earthquakes, horses. Issei's eyes widened with newfound respect. That's pretty cool. Does that mean you can, like, control water and stuff? Yeah, but it works differently here. Percy explained. Different pantheon, different rules. And I've got a dragon, Issei said, a hint of excitement breaking through his earlier shock. A dragon. That's pretty badass, right? Percy couldn't help but smile at Issei's enthusiasm. Despite everything, being killed, reincarnated as a devil, learning he housed an ancient dragon, the guy was already bouncing back. It reminded Percy of how he'd felt after learning he was a demigod, terrified but also secretly thrilled at the possibilities. Very badass, Percy agreed. Just be careful with it. Great power, great responsibility, and all that. Quote, you sound like you're speaking from experience, Issei observed, surprisingly perceptive. Percy's expression sobered. Let's just say I've seen what happens when people let power go to their heads. It's never pretty. As they reached the main building, they found the campus buzzing with activity. Students hurried to classes, talking animatedly amongst themselves. Percy noticed several glancing their way, whispering behind their hands. Looks like we're still the hot topic, he sighed. Wait till they find out we've both got mythological creatures inside us, Issei joked. Then immediately looked mortified. I mean, not that I'd tell anyone. Secret identity and all that. It's fine, Percy assured him. You'll get used to the double life thing. Though fair warning, it never gets easier trying to explain away the weird stuff that happens around you. Like what? Exploding bathrooms, mysterious fires, teachers turning into monsters. Issei stared at him. That happens often. Quote, more than you'd think. As they entered their classroom, Percy felt the weight of what Artemis had told him. Weakening barriers between pantheons. Issei's acred gear drawing attention from divine beings. Kuoh's warning about coming war. Once again, he'd found himself at the center of events with potentially catastrophic consequences. But this time, he was operating in unfamiliar territory, with allies he barely knew and enemies whose capabilities he didn't fully understand. Yet strangely, as he took his seat and prepared for another day of pretending to be an ordinary exchange student, Percy felt more alive than he had in months. After the trauma of Tartarus, the grief of losing friends in the giant war, the pressure of constant prophecies and expectations, he'd been adrift. Now he had purpose again, protecting new friends, facing new challenges, finding his place in a world he was only beginning to understand. Perhaps that was why he'd been drawn to Kuoh in the first place. Not just to escape his old life, but to find a new one. After classes ended, Percy returned to the Occult Research Club building to find it significantly more crowded than before. In addition to Rias's peerage and Issei, Sona Citri was present with several members of the student council. They had gathered in a larger room on the ground floor that Percy had seen before, a training area with reinforced walls and various weapons displayed along one wall. Ah, Percy, right on time, Rias greeted him. We were just discussing training regimens for both you and Issei. Sona approached, her expression serious. Before we begin, I'd like to hear about your dream communication directly. Divine messages across pantheon boundaries are extremely rare. Hey, RCY recounted his conversation with Artemis once more, noting how attentively everyone listened, particularly when he mentioned the weakening barriers between divine realms. This aligns with our observations, Sona confirmed when he finished. We've noted fluctuations in the boundary wards around Kuoh for months. Initially, we attributed it to natural variations, but if a Greek goddess has taken notice, it's part of a larger pattern, Rias finished for her. The question is whether these weakening boundaries are a natural phenomenon or if someone is deliberately causing them. Artemis seemed to think my presence here was accelerating the process, Percy added. Though she didn't say it was my fault, exactly. Divine beings often carry their pantheon's essence with them, Sona explained. As a son of Poseidon, you naturally bring Greek divine energy into our territory. It creates a resonance effect. Like ripples in water, Percy realized. My being here disrupts the existing patterns. Precisely. Sona nodded, appearing impressed by his quick understanding. Which makes your training all the more important. You need to learn how to minimize that disruption when necessary. And how to use it to your advantage in combat. And what about me? Issei asked eagerly. How do I activate this boosted gear thing? Rias stepped forward. Sacred gears respond to the user's will and emotions. The stronger your desire, the more likely you are to awaken its power. So, I just really want it to work. Issei looked skeptical. Not quite that simple, Kiba explained. Speaking from experience as a sacred gear user himself. Try imagining the strongest thing you can think of, then picture that power flowing through you. Remember how it felt when you were dying, Kaneko added bluntly. Causing Issei to wince. That desperation. Channel it. Percy watched as Issei closed his eyes, his face scrunched in concentration. For several moments, nothing happened. Then, just as Issei's expression began to fall in disappointment, a faint red glow emanated from his left hand. That's it, Rias exclaimed. Focus, Issei. The glow intensified, spreading up Issei's arm. His eyes flew open in shock as a metallic red gauntlet materialized over his hand and forearm, adorned with a green jewel at its center. The boosted gear, Akeno breathed, a note of awe in her voice. It's truly the Red Dragon Emperor. The gauntlet pulsed with power, the green jewel flashing. Boost. A deep, resonant voice emerged from the gauntlet, startling everyone. Did it just talk? Issei stared at his arm in disbelief. IAMDDRAIG, the Red Dragon Emperor. WHO has awakened me. Percy had encountered sentient objects before. Annabeth's invisibility cap, magical weep. Ons with personalities, but a full-on conversation with a dragon trapped in a gauntlet was new territory. Rias stepped forward, her manner formal. Greetings, Didraig. I am Rias Grimori, heir to the House of Grimori. Your current wielder, Issei Hyodo, has been reincarnated into my peerage. The jewel pulsed as the dragon considered this information. A devil host. Interesting. And what of the sea god's son? I sense his presence here. Closing square bracket. Percy tensed as all eyes turned to him. You can sense what I am. Divine blood has a distinct aroma, especially from the elder pantheons. It has been many cycles since I encountered a child of Poseidon. You know my father? Percy asked, surprised. I am older than your father's reign, demigod. The dragons flew when the titans still ruled your world. The implications of that statement hung heavy in the air. Didraig wasn't just old, he was ancient beyond Percy's comprehension, predating the Olympian gods themselves. Didraig, Rias spoke again. We believe your current wielder is being targeted by multiple factions, including fallen angels led by Kokobile. Can you confirm if the boosted gear is what they seek? The power to slay gods has always been coveted. But there is more at stake now. The boundaries thin, old powers stir. The convergence approaches. Convergence. Sona stepped closer. What convergence? Cycles end and begin. Barriers rise and fall. When pantheons meet, conflict follows. It has always been so. Percy felt a chill at the dragon's words, remembering Artemis's warning. Is that why my presence here accelerates the weakening? Because it's already happening naturally. You are a catalyst, son of Poseidon, not the cause. Just as my host is a focal point, not the source. The wheels were set in motion long ago. Issei looked down at the gauntlet with newfound respect and trepidation. So, what do I do? How do I use this power? Practice. Train. Grow stronger. Each boost doubles your power, but your body must become capable of containing that strength. Begin small. The gauntlet pulsed once more, then the glow receded, leaving Issei looking both exhilarated and exhausted. That was intense, he breathed. And informative, Sona added thoughtfully. This convergence Diedrag mentioned must be connected to the boundary weakening. If multiple pantheons are involved, then we need allies, Rias finished. Beyond just our two houses. She turned to Percy. Could you contact your pantheon directly? Request more information or assistance? Percy grimaced. Contacting the gods isn't like making a phone call. They respond when they want to, if at all. He hesitated. But there might be another way. If Artemis could reach me in a dream, maybe Annabeth could help. Annabeth? Akino inquired. My friend. Percy explained, the hesitation noticeable. Daughter of Athena, she has connections to both Camp Half-Blood and Camp Jupiter, our two main demigod sanctuaries. If anyone can research inter-pantheon incidents, it's her. That would be valuable, Sona acknowledged. In the meantime, we should focus on training both of you to maximize your effectiveness in our realm. The rest of the afternoon was spent in rigorous practice. Percy worked on adapting his water control to the different metaphysical environment, discovering that while his powers required more energy to use, he could achieve effects impossible in his home pantheon, like imbuing his water with various properties that interacted with devil energy. Issei, meanwhile, struggled with the basics of his sacred gear. Each boost dramatically increased his strength, but his body couldn't handle more than 2 or 3 before becoming dangerously strained. Rias assured him this limitation would diminish with practice. As evening approached, Percy felt exhausted but satisfied. Progress had been made, alliances strengthened, information gained. But as he prepared to leave, Sona approached him with one final question. Percy, there's something we've been wondering. When Kuoh attacked, your sword, Riptide, seemed effective against his light spears. Most weapons would have been useless. Percy drew the pen from his pocket, turning it thoughtfully in his fingers. Celestial bronze. It's forged from divine materials in my world, designed to harm monsters and immortals while passing harmlessly through mortals. May I? Sona held out her hand. Percy hesitated, then uncapped the pen. As it expanded into its sword form, he carefully handed it to Sona hilt first. The moment her fingers touched the grip, she flinched, nearly dropping the blade. It resists me. It recognizes you're not human, Percy explained. But not a monster either. It's confused. Sona returned the sword with newfound respect. Such a weapon would be invaluable in the coming conflict. If we could understand its properties, perhaps replicate them. No one replicates Riptide, Percy said firmly, recapping the sword. It has its own history, its own personality, I guess you could say. Of course, Sona backed down gracefully. I merely meant to understand its capabilities. Knowledge is our greatest asset, especially when facing unknown threats. As Percy left the old building, the sun was setting over Kuoh Academy. Students had long since departed, leaving the campus eerily quiet. He thought about all he'd learned. About sacred gears and evil pieces, about ancient dragons and thinning barriers between pantheons. Once again, he found himself at the center of events with potentially world-altering consequences. But unlike previous crises, this one didn't feel like his burden alone to bear. Rias, Sona, and their peerages were powerful allies, each with their own strengths and insights. And then there was Issei, an ordinary teenager suddenly thrust into extraordinary circumstances, much as Percy had been at 12. Perhaps that was why Percy felt a certain kinship with him, despite their different backgrounds and personalities. The future remained uncertain. Kuoh would return, likely with reinforcements. Other factions would come seeking the boosted gear. The mysterious convergence Diedrag had mentioned loomed on the horizon. But as Percy walked home through the quiet streets of Kuoh, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: purpose. Not the burden of a prophecy or the weight of others' expectations, but a genuine sense that he was where he needed to be, doing what he was meant to do. Whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Divine Convergence. The week following Issei's awakening as the Red Dragon Emperor passed in a blur of training, planning, and increasingly tense supernatural politics. Percy found himself in a strange new routine, attending classes by day, where he was now one of Kuoh Academy's most talked-about students, and training with both devil peerages by night to hone his abilities in this unfamiliar pantheon. Tonight, he stood in the center of a specialized training room beneath the old-school building, surrounded by water he'd summoned from pipes and condensed from the air. Rias and Sona observed from a safe distance, taking notes and occasionally offering suggestions. "Try infusing it with your divine energy," Rias called out. "Not just controlling it, but imbuing it with your essence." Percy nodded, concentrating on the swirling mass of water around him. In his home territory, water naturally responded to his will as a son of Poseidon. Here, he needed to actively stamp his authority on it, claiming it as his domain in a realm where other powers held sway. He closed his eyes, reaching deep within himself to the core of power he'd inherited from his father. The familiar tug in his gut intensified as he pushed that energy outward, not just directing the water but transforming it, making it an extension of his divine bloodline. The change was immediate and dramatic. Water began to glow with a soft blue-green light, reminiscent of the Mediterranean on a clear day. Percy felt his connection to it strengthen exponentially, no longer fighting against the foreign pantheon's influence, but carving out a space within it that recognized his authority. "Remarkable," Sona murmured, adjusting her glasses. "The water is taking on properties similar to holy water, but with a distinctly different signature." "Ocean-born water," Rias suggested, making another note in her journal. "Divine, but not of the biblical system." Percy opened his eyes, seeing his surroundings through the shimmering curtain of glowing water. With barely a thought, he shaped it into a series of spinning rings around himself, then hardened sections into ice spears that hovered in perfect formation. "Now for the test," Rias said, nodding to Kiba who stood ready across the room. The blonde knight summoned a light spear, not as powerful as a fallen angel's, but a reasonable facsimile Kree. Ted threw his sacred gear's ability to forge any blade. He launched it directly at Percy with blinding speed. Percy didn't dodge. Instead, he directed one of his water rings to intercept the spear. When light met divine water, the spear didn't just stop. It sizzled and dispersed, its energy seemingly absorbed and neutralized by the glowing liquid. "Holy shit," Percy breathed, surprised by his own success. "Language," Sona chided automatically, though her eyes betrayed her excitement at the result. "But yes, this is a significant breakthrough. You've essentially created a defense mechanism, specifically effective against light-based attacks, which will be crucial when Kokobile returns," Rias added, her expression serious despite the success. "The question is whether you can maintain this level of control in actual combat." Percy let the water return to its natural state, feeling the drain on his reserves. "It takes more energy than I'm used to. In my world, water just obeys me. Here, I have to convince it, almost negotiate with it. You're essentially carving out a small pocket of Greek divine influence in territory dominated by other metaphysical systems," Sona explained. "It's impressive that you can do it at all, much less to this degree." Speaking of impressive, Rias changed the subject, checking her watch. "We should check on Issei's progress with Akino." EY moved to an adjacent training room where Issei was working with the vice president of the Occult Research Club. The brown-haired teen had the boosted gear activated on his left arm, its red metal gleaming under the room's lights. His face was contorted with effort as Akino directed him through a series of movements designed to channel his boosted energy. "Boost," the sacred gear's deep voice announced another doubling of Issei's power, the green jewel flashing brightly. This marked the fourth consecutive boost, a significant improvement from the two he could manage just days ago. "Good, Issei-kun," Akino encouraged, her tone professional despite her normally playful demeanor. "Now try to direct that energy through your entire body, not just the gauntlet." Sweat beaded on Issei's forehead as he struggled to follow her instructions. A red aura began to emanate from his body, flickering like flames as he fought to control it. Explosion. The gauntlet's voice called out a new command. and the energy surrounding Issei suddenly intensified, causing everyone to step back. For a brief moment, the power seemed to stabilize, then Issei gasped, his knees buckling as the aura dispersed. Damn it, he panted, the boosted gear disappearing as his concentration broke. I almost had it that time. You're improving rapidly, Rias assured him, helping him to his feet. 4 boosts in a row is remarkable progress for someone who only awakened their sacred gear a week ago. Diedrag says I should be able to handle at least 8 by now, Issei grumbled, accepting a towel from Akino to wipe his face. Something about my devil body adapting faster than a human would. The dragon may be ancient, but patience isn't his strong suit, Rias replied diplomatically. Trust me, your growth rate is exceptional. Percy studied Issei with newfound respect. Despite his often goofy exterior and occasional perverted comments, the guy had shown remarkable determination in his training. The revelation that he housed one of the most powerful sacred gears in existence hadn't gone to his head. If anything, it had given him a sense of purpose Percy found familiar. How's the water bending coming along? Issei asked Percy, gulping down a sports drink Akino had provided. Better, Percy replied. I've figured out how to make it effective against light weapons. Sweet. Think you could teach me how to swim sometime? I'm actually terrible at it, which is kind of embarrassing. Percy couldn't help but laugh at the randomness of the request amidst their apocalyptic preparations. Sure, though I'm basically cheating when it comes to swimming. Their moment of normalcy was interrupted by the arrival of Tsubaki, who entered with an air of urgency that immediately captured everyone's attention. Kaichu, Rias-sama, she addressed both leaders formally. We've detected an unusual energy signature at the town's boundary. It's not something we've encountered before. Sona straightened, all traces of the scholarly observer vanishing as she shifted into her role as territory defender. Location: the old shrine at the edge of town. Kaneko is maintaining surveillance from a distance. Percy and Issei exchanged looks. They'd both heard enough of these reports over the past week to recognize the gravity in Tsubaki's tone. This wasn't just another stray devil or minor fluctuation in the barrier. Description: Rias prompted. That's just it, Tsubaki frowned. It doesn't match any known signature in our records. Not devil, angel, fallen, yokai, or any other catalogued entity. The energy is, Kaneko described it as, ancient and smelling of the sea. All eyes turned to Percy. Don't look at me, he protested. I've been here the whole time. Sea energy could indicate another entity from your pantheon, Sona theorized. Perhaps a response to Artemis's dream communication. Percy's mind raced through possibilities. Another Greek deity, a monster, one of his half-siblings. None seemed likely given the difficulty Artemis had mentioned in crossing pantheon boundaries. We should investigate, Rias decided. Percy, you'll come with us since you're most likely to recognize whatever it is. Issei as well. We may need the boosted gear if this turns hostile. What about me? Akino asked, lightning already crackling subtly around her fingertips. Stay with Kiba and guard the school, Rias instructed. If this is a diversion to draw us away from Kuoh Academy, we need our defenses maintained. Sona nodded her agreement. Tsubaki, you'll accompany us. The rest of the student council will reinforce the campus barriers. As they prepared to depart, Percy uncapped Riptide, drawing comfort from the familiar weight of the sword. Whatever awaited them at the shrine, he had a growing suspicion it was connected to Artemis's warning about the weakening barriers between pantheons. The convergence Diedrag had mentioned was beginning. The old shrine sat atop a wooded hill overlooking Kuoh town, accessible only by a long stone stairway that wound through ancient cedar trees. As Percy climbed alongside the others, he felt a prickling sensation along High's skin, the unmistakable presence of divine energy, growing stronger with each step. You feel it too, Sona observed, noticing his reaction. Percy nodded. It's familiar, but different. He frowned, trying to place the sensation. It reminds me of my father's domain, but not quite. Kaneko met them at the top of the stairs, her expression as impassive as ever despite the unusual circumstances. Inside, she said simply, pointing toward the main shrine building. Waiting, Rias questioned. It knows we're coming. Asked for Percy by name, Kaneko confirmed. Said only Greeks approach first. A chill ran down Percy's spine. Whatever had crossed into this territory knew him personally. It could be a trap, Tsubaki warned. Luring Percy alone. Or a diplomatic courtesy, Sona countered. Some pantheons have strict protocols for cross-realm contact. Percy gripped Riptide tighter, decision already made. I'll go. Stay close, but let me make first contact. Percy. Rias began, concern evident in her voice. I've dealt with divine beings before, he assured her, though the confidence in his voice exceeded what he felt. If it asked for me specifically, there's a reason. The shrine itself was traditional Japanese in design, a simple wooden structure with a curved roof and open front that faced a small courtyard. Paper lanterns hung along the eaves, unlit in the early evening darkness. The place had a neglected air about it, clearly no longer in active use by the local community. As Percy approached alone, he extended his senses, searching for water sources he could use if things went badly. A small offering basin stood near the entrance, and he could feel a spring beneath the shrine itself, not much, but better than nothing. He stopped at the threshold, peering into the dimly lit interior. At first, he saw nothing. Then, movement in the shadows resolved into a figure sitting cross-legged in the center of the shrine. A boy, perhaps 12 or 13 in appearance, with dark hair and eyes that reflected the fading daylight like polished obsidian. He wore simple jeans and a t-shirt that read, Rhode Island Aquarium, across the chest. Despite his youthful appearance, he radiated an aura of immense age and power. Percy knew immediately this was no child. Perseus Jackson, the boy said, his voice carrying the gentle rhythm of waves on a shore. Far from home, aren't you? Son of Poseidon. Percy maintained his grip on Riptide but didn't raise it threateningly. You have me at a disadvantage. You know who I am, but I don't know you. The boy smiled, an expression that transformed his youthful face into something ancient and knowing. Don't you? We've met before, though briefly. I am Pontus, primordial god of the sea. Percy racked his brain, trying to remember any mention of Pontus from his limited studies of Greek mythology. The name was vaguely familiar, one of the protogonoi, the firstborn deities that preceded even the Titans. You're older than my father, Percy said carefully. I am older than your father's father's father, Pontus corrected, still smiling. Before Poseidon claimed the seas, before Oceanus ruled the waters, I was the sea itself. He gestured to the shrine around them. Different cultures give us different names, different forms, but some concepts are universal across pantheons. The sea is one such constant. Percy took a cautious step into the shrine. Why are you here? Artemis said crossing between pantheons was difficult, even for gods. For younger gods, perhaps, Pontus agreed. Those who arose after the boundaries solidified. But I existed before such divisions. I flow where I wish, though I seldom choose to manifest in these realms anymore. Then why now? Pontus's expression grew serious. Because of what approaches, Percy Jackson. The convergence that your draconic friend mentioned. Dedrag, you know about that. I know many things. The sea connects all lands, all realms. It carries whispers across boundaries that even gods cannot easily cross. Pontus stood, and despite his childlike appearance, the movement carried an impression of vast power held carefully in check. The barriers between divine realms have been weakening for centuries, a natural cycle as old as creation itself. But recent events have accelerated the process. Gaia's awakening, Percy guessed. Among other factors, yes. When primordials stir, the very foundations of reality tremble. Pontus began to pace slowly around the shrine, trailing fingers along ancient wooden pillars. Now, that weakening has reached a critical point. Soon, beings from many pantheons will be able to cross freely between realms that have been separate for millennia. That sounds like a recipe for disaster, Percy observed. Indeed. The last convergence triggered what mortals now call the Bronze Age collapse, the fall of civilizations across the Mediterranean and Near East. Gods and monsters clashed as territories overlapped. Divine wars spilled into the mortal realm. Percy felt his stomach tighten. And you think it's happening again? I know it is, Pontus corrected. It has already begun. Your presence here is both symptom and catalyst, a son of Poseidon in territory claimed by biblical and Shinto powers. The Red Dragon Emperor awakening with unprecedented potential. Kokobil's ambitions reaching beyond his faction's authority. He paused, turning to face Percy directly. Pieces moving on the board as the game begins anew. I'm not a piece in anyone's game, Percy said firmly, an edge entering his voice. After years of being used as a pawn by the Olympians, he had little patience for divine manipulations. Pontus's smile returned, this time with something like approval. No, you're not, which is precisely why I've come to you rather than your father or the Olympian Council. You, Percy Jackson, have a history of defying fate and forging your own path. So what do you want from me? Initially, information. Pontus gestured toward the shrine entrance. Invite your new friends to join us. This concerns them as well. Percy hesitated, then called out, it's okay. You can come in. Rias entered first, followed by Sona, Tsubaki, Issei, and Kaneko. They arranged themselves carefully, maintaining a respectful distance from the seemingly young boy who radiated primordial power. Fascinating, Pontus observed, studying the devils with undisguised interest. The Grimoire heir and the Cetri heir, both wielding power derived from the biblical system yet fundament. Ally transformed from its original design. And the new Red Dragon Emperor. His eyes lingered on Issei. A worthy vessel for Ddraig's power, perhaps. Time will tell. Rias stepped forward, her man. Formal despite the strange circumstances. I am Rias Grimoire, heir to the House of Grimoire and administrator of this territory. May I ask your intentions here, Lord Pontus? The primordial god seemed amused by the formality. Direct and diplomatic. Your reputation is well earned, young Grimoire. My intentions are to observe, to inform, and perhaps to guide, though I hold no authority in your realm. You mentioned a convergence, Percy prompted, bringing them back to the matter at hand. What exactly does that mean for us, here and now? Pontus's expression grew solemn. In practical terms, incursions. Beings from multiple pantheons will begin appearing in this realm with increasing frequency. Some will come out of curiosity, others with purpose. Many will be drawn to sources of power. He nodded toward Issei. Such as the boosted gear. We've already increased our defenses, Sona noted, and established monitoring systems around the town's perimeter. Admirable preparations, but insufficient, Pontus said. Not unkindly. You're accustomed to threats within your own metaphysical framework. Devils, angels, yokai. But how will your barriers fare against an Olympian deity? Or an Egyptian god? Or entities from pantheons so ancient even I barely remember their names? The implications hung heavy in the air. Kuoh's supernatural defenders had operated within a relatively stable system for generations. The introduction of beings from other mythological frameworks represented an unprecedented challenge. That's why you're here, Percy realized. Not just to warn us, but because you want something in return. Pontus smiled again, clearly pleased with Percy's insight. Perceptive, as always. Yes, I have my own interests in this convergence. The sea touches all shores, and I would prefer those shores remain intact. Massive divine conflicts tend to reshape coastlines in ways I find disruptive. So you're offering an alliance? Rias asked cautiously. Of a sort, Pontus confirmed. Information, primarily. My nature allows me to perceive movements between realms that others cannot. I can provide warning of significant incursions before they occur. And in exchange, Sona pressed, I ask only that you consider the broader implications of your actions. The three factions of this realm have maintained their uneasy peace through careful boundaries and treaties. As those boundaries weaken, new accommodations must be made, not just with each other, but with powers from other pantheons. You want us to be diplomats, Percy translated, not just defenders. Precisely. War between pantheons benefits no one, except perhaps those who feed on chaos and destruction. Pontus's expression darkened momentarily, and such entities are already stirring, drawn by the possibilities the convergence presents. Issei, who had remained uncharacteristically quiet throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. Quick question. When you say, entities that feed on chaos and destruction, are we talking like end-of-the-world bad guys? Pontus regarded him with something between amusement and respect. Your instincts serve you well, Red Dragon Emperor. Yes, there. Forces that would use the convergence to unmake what exists and reshape it to their preference. Some from your pantheon, some from the Greek, others from realms you've never encountered. Great, Issei muttered. Just checking. Lord Pontus, Tsubaki spoke formally. You mentioned providing warnings about incursions. How would we contact you if we needed such information? The Primordia. El-God reached into his pocket and withdrew what appeared to be an ordinary seashell. Small, spiral-shaped, with iridescent patterns that shifted as it caught the light. Percy knows how to use this, he said, tossing the shell to the demigod, who caught it reflexively. Water is my domain, and he is water's child. When you need me, speak to the sea, and I will hear. Percy examined the shell, feeling the divine energy emanating from it, subtle but unmistakably powerful. I'm guessing this does more than just call for help. It serves multiple purposes, Pontus acknowledged cryptically. Its full capabilities will reveal themselves when needed. Before anyone could question him further, the god's form began to shimmer slightly, like heat rising from pavement. Our time grows short, maintaining this manifestation across pantheon boundaries requires energy, even for one such as myself. Wait, Percy insisted. You said some entities are already stirring. Any specific ones we should be watching for? Pontus's form continued to waver, but his voice remained clear. The first will come from your own pantheon, Percy Jackson. One with personal interest in both you and the Red Dragon Emperor. Watch the eastern horizon at dawn 3 days hence. His gaze shifted to include all of them. Remember, strength alone will not navigate the convergence. Wisdom, diplomacy, and adaptation will prove far more valuable. With those final words, Pontus's form dissolved into a fine mist that smelled of sea salt and ancient depths. It swirled briefly around the shrine before dissipating completely, leaving only a lingering sense of his presence behind. For several moments, no one spoke, each processing what they had witnessed and heard. Well, Issei finally broke the silence, that was cryptic as hell. Percy couldn't help but laugh despite the gravity of the situation. Welcome to dealing with gods. They're allergic to straight answers. Still, Rias said thoughtfully, he provided more concrete information than we had before. A timeline, for one thing. Something approaches from the east at dawn in 3 days. From the Greek pantheon, Sona added, looking at Percy. With a personal connection to you. Percy frowned, mentally cataloging possibilities. A Greek deity or entity with connections to both him and dragons. Nothing immediately came to mind, which was troubling. We should prepare, Tsubaki suggested practically. Increase patrols, particularly along the eastern boundary. And contact the other devil families in the region, Rias agreed. If this convergence affects all supernatural factions, we'll need a united response. As they discussed immediate security measures, Percy turned the seashell over in his hands, studying its seemingly ordinary appearance. Like many divine artifacts he'd encountered, its true power was carefully disguised beneath a mundane exterior. Issei sidled up beside him, eyeing the shell curiously. So, you just talk to it when we need help. Seems too easy. With gods, nothing is ever as simple as it seems, Percy replied, pocketing the shell carefully. There's always a catch, always a price. He glanced at where Pontus had been sitting. The question is what he's not telling us. You don't trust him. Percy considered the question seriously. I don't distrust him, exactly. Pontus is so ancient he doesn't think like modern gods or humans. His motivations are probably exactly what he stated, he wants to prevent massive destruction. But his definition of acceptable losses might be very different from ours. Issei nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression replacing his usual carefree demeanor. Kind of like Didrake, he keeps talking about battles from thousands of years ago like they happened yesterday. And he gets super excited about the possibility of fighting other divine beings. He lowered his voice. Between you and me, I think he's a bit of a battle junkie. Despite the circumstances, Percy found himself appreciating Issei's perspective. The guy had an uncanny ability to cut through supernatural complexities with straightforward observations. We should head back, Rias called to them. Having finished her discussion with Sona. There are preparations to make. As they descended the shrine steps, Percy felt the weight of Pontus's warning settling over him. 3 days until something arrived from his pantheon, something connected to him personally. The timing left little opportunity for contacting Camp Half-Blood or consulting with Annabeth, who would have been his first choice. For identifying obscure mythological threats. He'd have to rely on his new allies and his own experiences, and hope that whatever came from the east was more friend than foe. The next morning, Percy woke to his phone buzzing insistently. He fumbled for it in the pre-dawn darkness, squinting at the bright screen. A text from Annabeth. Emergency. Call now. Fully awake instantly, Percy hit the call button, his mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Had something happened at camp? Was she hurt? Had monsters attacked Percy? Annabeth's voice came through clearly despite the international connection. She sounded tense but unharmed. I'm here. What's wrong? Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for days. No one's heard from you since that cryptic message about devils. Percy frowned. What are you talking about? We texted just last week. He checked the message history on his phone to confirm. I told you about meeting Rias and Sona, the devil heiresses. Percy, Annabeth said slowly. That was almost 3 weeks ago. You haven't responded to any messages since. A chill ran down his spine. That's not possible. I've been checking my phone daily. Well, nothing's been getting through. Chiron was about to send a search party. Her voice softened slightly. I was worried. Percy ran a hand through his hair, mind racing. Something's interfering with communications between pantheons. It has to be pantheons. Annabeth latched onto the term immediately. Percy, what exactly have you gotten yourself into? He gave her the condensed version. Kuoh Academy's supernatural nature. The 3 factions, Issei's sacred gear, Kokobil's attack, and finally Pontus's warning about the convergence. Pontus. Annabeth sounded shocked. The primordial god of the sea. Percy. He's not just some minor deity. He's one of the protogonoi, the first generation of divine beings. Most scholars think he faded eons ago. Well, he's definitely not faded. And he saw it. Something's coming from our pantheon in 2 days, at dawn. Something connected to both me and dragons. There was a brief silence as Annabeth processed this information. Percy could almost hear her mind working, sorting through mythological possibilities. There aren't many Greek entities with strong connections to both you and dragons specifically, she finally said. The most obvious would be. A sharp burst of static cut through her words. Annabeth. Percy called. You're breaking up. Trying to. Barrier. Warned by. Her voice came through in fragments, increasingly distorted by static. I can't hear you. Who's coming? Quote. Temmie said. Watch for. The call disconnected abruptly, leaving Percy staring at his phone in frustration. He tried calling back immediately, but the call wouldn't connect. Further attempts yielded the same result. Damn it, he muttered, tossing the phone onto his bed. Whatever was weakening the barriers between pantheons was also affecting communications. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Just as they received warning about an imminent arrival from the Greek side, his connection to his own world was severed. Percy glanced at the clock. 5:30 a.m., still too early for school. But he needed to inform Rias and Sona about this development. Grabbing his phone again, he sent a message to their shared group chat. Communications with my pantheon being blocked. Called Annabeth, Greek demigod ally, connection cut when discussing what's coming. Not a coincidence. Need to meet ASAP. The response from Rias came almost immediately. Club room, 7 a.m. Sona notified. Percy showered and dressed quickly, his mind turning over the fragments he'd caught from Annabeth. She'd been about to identify what might be coming when the connection failed. Something connected to Artemis, given the Temmie's fragment he'd heard. That tracked with his earlier dream communication from the goddess of the hunt. But why would Artemis have connections to dragons? Nothing in Greek mythology linked her specifically to dragons that Percy could recall, though his knowledge of mythology remained frustratingly incomplete despite years at Camp Half-Blood. As he prepared to leave, Percy hesitated, then reached for the seashell Pontus had given him. The primordial god had said Percy would know how to use it. Following instinct, he filled his bathroom sink with water, then held the shell above it. Pontus, he said clearly, we need to talk. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the water in the sink began to swirl gently, forming a miniature whirlpool. The surface rippled, reflecting light in patterns too deliberate to be random. Not yet, son of Poseidon, the ripples seemed to say, though no actual voice was heard. Some questions must be answered through experience, not forewarning. The water stilled, returning to normal. Percy sighed, pocketing the shell again. Typical divine non-answer. By the time he reached the old school building, the sun was just beginning to rise. He found not only Rias and Sona waiting in the club room, but their entire peerages as well. Everyone looked tense, with dark circles under their eyes suggesting none had slept much. Percy, Rias greeted him, dispensing with her usual formalities. Tell us exactly what happened. He recounted his brief conversation with Annabeth, including the specific fragments he'd caught before the connection was lost. A deliberate interruption, Sona concluded. Something doesn't want us to have advance knowledge of what's coming. But why? Issei asked, stifling a yawn. He looked particularly exhausted, likely from pushing himself in training. Wouldn't Pontus have just told us directly if he wanted us to know? Not necessarily, Tsubaki replied. Primordial beings often operate under different rules than younger gods. There may be limitations on what he can directly reveal. Rias paced the room, her crimson hair swaying with each turn. The timing is suspicious. First Pontus appears with a warning. Then communications with the Greek pantheon are suddenly blocked just as we're about to learn specific details. It suggests opposing forces, Akino observed. Some entities want us prepared. Others don't. The question is who benefits from our ignorance, Sona added. Percy leaned against a desk, frustration evident in his posture. Annabeth definitely mentioned Artemis. She said something like, Artemis said, or, Artemis warned. The goddess who contacted you in your dream, Rias recalled. Could she be the one approaching? Percy shook his head. Unlikely. Artemis usually appears as a 12-year-old girl or a young woman with her hunters. Pontus specifically said whatever's coming has connections to both me and dragons. Artemis doesn't have strong connections to either dragons or me personally. What about other Greek deities? Heba suggested. Any with dragon associations. Percy tried to remember his mythology lessons. Athens was founded after Apollo helped kill a dragon or serpent. Python, I think it was called. And there's the story of Cadmus sowing dragon's teeth. But neither has any special connection to me. What about non-divine entities? Tsubaki pressed. Monsters are heroes with dragon connections. A memory stirred in Percy's mind. A story Annabeth had once told him during their early days at camp. There is one possibility. Jason. The original Jason, not my friend Jason Grace. He was a Greek hero who sailed with the Argonauts and sought the Golden Fleece, which was guarded by a dragon. And your connection to him? Sona inquired. I retrieved the Golden Fleece myself, years ago. It saved Talia's tree and the magical borders of Camp Half-Blood. Percy frowned. But Jason himself has been dead for thousands of years. Heroes don't usually return unless what? Rias prompted. Unless they're brought back for a specific purpose, Percy finished grimly. The doors of death have been opened before, allowing spirits to return temporarily from the underworld. The room fell silent as everyone considered this possibility. So, Issei summarized, we might be facing an ancient Greek hero with dragon experience. Possibly back from the dead, arriving in 2 days at dawn. And we have no idea if he's friendly or not. That about sums it up, Percy agreed. Though there are other possibilities I haven't thought of. Rias made a decisive gesture. Regardless of what's coming, our preparations remain the same. We'll strengthen the eastern boundary, establish surveillance, and prepare both defensive and diplomatic contingencies. She turned to Sona. Your thoughts? Agreed. We should also accelerate training for both Percy and Issei. If this entity has connections to both Greek mythology and dragons, they're our most relevant assets. Issei straightened at being called an asset, a determined expression replacing his earlier fatigue. Diedrag might know something. He's mentioned being around since before the pantheons separated. An excellent point, Rias nodded. Can you consult with him? I can try, Issei said, summoning the boosted gear with a flash of red light. The gauntlet materialized around his left arm, its green jewel gleaming. Diedrag, Issei addressed the sacred gear directly. We need your help. Do you know anything about Greek entities with dragon connections who might be approaching Kuoh? The jewel pulsed with light. Many Greek heroes fought dragons in the ancient days. I myself battled several Olympians before my sealing. Any with connections to Percy specifically, or to Poseidon's lineage. The dragon was silent for a moment, as if considering. There is one possibility. The guardian of the Golden Fleece was no ordinary dragon, but a child of Echidna and Typhon, appointed by Ares himself. When it was slain by the first Jason, its essence returned to the primordial darkness, but its teeth remained, seeds of power that could spawn warriors when planted. Percy felt a chill of recognition. The Spartoi, earth-born warriors that grow from dragons' teeth. Clarice and I fought some on the Argo too during the Giant War. The original teeth carried greater power than any used in recent eras. Most were scattered after the dragon's death, but some remained with the fleece, their potential dormant until awakened by a worthy wielder. And I brought the fleece back to camp, Percy realized. Could the teeth have been, I don't know, activated somehow by my connection to it? Possible. The ancient magic of the fleece responds to need and intent. If a situation arose requiring guardians with the dragon's essence, the teeth might activate autonomously. Rias leaned forward, intrigued. So we could be facing warriors born from dragon's teeth, connected to Percy through the Golden Fleece. Or something else entirely, Diedraig replied cryptically. The convergence distorts ancient magics in unpredictable ways. What was once predictable may manifest differently now. Super helpful, as always, Issei muttered to his gauntlet. Louder, he asked, can you at least tell us if whatever's coming is hostile? Opening square bracket. Dragon-born entities typically serve as guardians. Whether they guard against you or for you depends on the circumstances of their awakening. With that final ambiguous statement, the jewel's light dimmed, indicating Diedraig had retreated into the depths of the sacred gear. Well, that narrowed it down to something dragon-related that might or might not try to kill us, Percy summarized dryly. At least we're consistent with the quality of divine information. Despite his sarcastic tone, Percy was troubled. The Golden Fleece had been safely stored at Camp Half-Blood for years. What would cause any dragon's teeth associated with it to suddenly activate and send something across Pantheon boundaries? Rias seemed to read his concern. Whatever approaches, we'll face it together. 2 days gives us time to prepare properly. We should maintain normal routines to avoid drawing attention, Sona advised. Classes as usual, but accelerated training in the evenings. Percy nodded agreement. Maintaining some semblance of normalcy would help keep their edge. Besides, his academic standing at Kuoh was precarious enough without missing more classes. One more thing, he added. If communications with my world are being blocked, we should assume whoever or whatever is coming has access to information about me. My powers, my fighting style, my history, they'll know it all. Which gives them a significant tactical advantage. Kiba noted. Unless, Akino suggested with a thoughtful expression, we use that expectation against them. Percy, you've been adapting your abilities to work differently in our realm. Your fighting style has evolved to incorporate devil techniques we've taught you. An opponent expecting traditional Greek demigod combat would be surprised, Tsubaki agreed, catching on quickly. Especially if you're fighting alongside a devil peerage rather than alone. For the first time since receiving Annabeth's disrupted call, Percy felt a glimmer of hope. His W allies had helped him develop approaches to combat that no Greek opponent would anticipate, combining his water control with Rias's destruction power, coordinating with Kiba's speed, incorporating Sona's tactical formations. We have classes soon, Rias concluded, checking the time. Percy, Issei, try to rest when possible. Tonight, we train at maximum intensity. As the meeting dispersed, Y found himself walking alongside Tsubaki toward the main academy building. Her usual composed demeanor remained intact, but he noticed a subtle tension in her shoulders. You look worried, he observed. Tsubaki adjusted her glasses, a habit Percy had come to recognize as her processing complex thoughts. This convergence, it doesn't align with any prophecies or predictions in our records. The Devil archivists maintain extensive documentation on cosmic cycles, yet nothing mentions a weakening of Pantheon boundaries on this scale. Maybe it wasn't documented, Percy suggested. Or the records were lost. Perhaps, she didn't sound convinced. Or perhaps this convergence is unprecedented, something new in the cosmic order. The implication hung between them. If this was truly something new, then no one, not even ancient beings like Pontus or Diedraig, could accurately predict what would happen next. As they reached the main building, the normal buzz of student activity created a a real contrast to their apocalyptic concerns. Girls gossiped about weekend plans, boys compared notes on video games, teachers reminded students about upcoming exams. None aware that forces capable of reshaping reality were converging on their town. It's strange, Percy mused, watching the normal high school dynamics play out around them. No matter how many times the world almost ends, most people just keep going about their lives. Completely unaware. Is that not the point? Tsubaki replied softly. Why we fight? So they can continue their ordinary lives without fear. Percy considered this. In his previous battles, he'd fought to save Camp Half-Blood, to protect his friends, to fulfill prophecies. The abstract concept of preserving normalcy for strangers had rarely been his primary motivation. Yet looking around at the students of Kuoh, innocent bystanders in a supernatural conflict, he found the idea resonating more than expected. I guess it is, he admitted. Tsubaki offered a rare small smile. Then we have common cause, regardless of which pantheon we serve. The simple statement carried unexpected weight. Percy had spent years defining himself in relation to his divine heritage, son of Poseidon. Hero of Olympus, Greek demigod. Yet here, in this foreign territory with allies from a completely different mythological framework, those labels felt less defining than shared purpose Tsubaki had articulated. As they parted for their respective classrooms, Percy found himself considering that perhaps the boundaries between pantheons were arbitrary in more ways than one. That evening's training session was the most intense yet. Rias and Sona had converted the underground facility into a simulated battlefield, complete with obstacles, varying terrain, and conjured opponents of increasing difficulty. Percy stood back to back with Issei in the center of the arena, both breathing heavily after repelling the latest wave of attackers, magical constructs designed to mimic various supernatural threats. Ready for the next level? Rias called from the observation platform. Bring it on, Issei replied with characteristic bravado, the boosted gear gleaming on his arm. He'd managed to maintain 5 consecutive boosts during their last exchange, a new personal record. Percy twirled Riptide, now wreathed in the glowing blue-green water he'd learned to imbue with his divine essence. What's next? More fallen angels, stray devils. Sona adjusted a control panel, her expression serious. Something new. An approximation of Greek monsters, based on research and Percy's descriptions. The arena shimmered as the magic circle beneath them activated. From swirling mist emerged 3 figures, a minotaur-like creature with massive horns, a multi-headed hydra whose necks writhed independently. And what appeared to be a manticore, complete with scorpion tail. Seriously, Percy couldn't help but laugh. Points for accuracy, but the real ones are uglier. Focus on combining your techniques. Rias instructed. Remember, whatever comes tomorrow may expect you to fight like a Greek hero, alone and direct. Show us something different. Percy nodded, understanding the strategy. He reached out with his senses, connecting with the water pipes that ran beneath the training facility. At the same time, he felt Issei gathering his boosted energy beside him. Plan? Issei asked, eyeing the approaching constructs. I'll draw their attention with a frontal assault, Percy decided. When they focus on me, boost one more time, then hit them from behind with everything you've got. Aim for the Hydra first, it's the most dangerous if you let it regenerate. Got it. On your signal, Percy advanced, summoning a swirling vortex of glowing water around himself. The constructs, programmed to behave like their mythological counterparts, reacted predictably. The Minotaur charged head-on, the Manticore circled to find a ranged attack position, and the Hydra hung back. Its multiple heads weaving hypnotically. Instead of meeting the Minotaur's charge directly as a Greek demigod might, Percy sidestepped at the last moment, a technique Kiba had taught him. As the construct barreled past, Percy sliced with Riptide, not to kill but to hamstring, a devil tactic that prioritized disabling opponents over heroic direct confrontation. The Minotaur stumbled, bellowing in rage. Percy didn't press the advantage as he might have in the past. Instead, he retreated, drawing all 3 constructs toward him in a controlled movement designed to cluster them together. Now, he shouted to Issei, boost. The boosted gear announced its 6th consecutive power doubling, a new record for Issei. The brown-haired devil charged forward, his body wreathed in crimson energy. Explosion. The accumulated power released in a focused blast, striking all three constructs from behind. Simultaneously, Percy dropped to one knee, slamming his palm against the ground. The water pipes beneath the facility ruptured in a controlled explosion, sending geysers of divine-infused water erupting beneath the already damaged constructs. As the monsters staggered between Issei's draconic energy and Percy's divine water, Percy made a slashing motion with his free hand. The water responded instantly, hardening into ice spears that pierced the constructs from multiple angles, an other technique borrowed from Akino's lessons on element manipulation. The Minotaur and Manticore constructs dissolved immediately under the combined assault. The Hydra lasted a few seconds longer, its heads thrashing as they attempted to regenerate, before succumbing to the ice spears embedded in its central mass. Impressive, Sona acknowledged from the observation platform. The combination O-F techniques from different metaphysical systems creates attack patterns that would be difficult to predict or counter. Issei grinned, dismissing the boosted gear as he caught his breath. 6 boosts. That's a new record. And more importantly, you maintained control throughout the explosion phase, Rias noted approvingly. Your body is adapting to the sacred gear's power more quickly than expected. Percy capped Riptide, allowing the water to recede back into the damaged pipes. The ice spear technique is getting more reliable. Maintaining the divine infusion still drains me, but not as badly as before. Both of you have progressed remarkably in a short time, Sona observed. The question is whether it will be sufficient for what comes tomorrow. Only one way to find out, Percy replied, trying to project more confidence than he felt. As they continued training, cycling through different combat scenarios and opponent types, Percy found himself reflecting on how much his fighting style had evolved during his time at Kuoh. He'd always been an instinctive fighter, relying on reflexes and adaptability rather than formal technique. But training with the Devils had added new dimensions to his approach. Kiba's precision, Kaniko's economy of movement, Akino's elemental manipulation, Rias's strategic deployment of power. If whatever was coming expected to face the same Percy Jackson who had fought in the Titan and Giant Wars, they were in for a surprise. By the time they finished, well after midnight, everyone was exhausted but satisfied with their preparation. They had done everything possible to ready themselves for the approaching confrontation. Now all that remained was to wait for dawn, less than 30 hours away. As Percy walked home through the quiet streets of Kuoh, he found himself unexpectedly calm. The familiar pre-battle tension was there, but tempered by confidence in his new allies and the strategies they'd developed together. Whatever crossed the Pantheon boundary tomorrow, it wouldn't be facing a lone demigod, but a united front of devils and Greek divine power working in harmony. For the first time since arriving in this strange new realm, Percy felt not just resigned to his role in the unfolding events, but genuinely hopeful about the outcome. That optimism lasted until he reached his apartment and found the door slightly ajar. Instantly alert, Percy uncapped Riptide, the celestial bronze sword expanding to its full length. He approached cautiously, extending his senses to detect any water sources he could use as weapons. The A.P. Ardment's pipes responded faintly to his call, ready if needed. Using Riptide's tip, he pushed the door open wider, revealing his darkened apartment beyond. Nothing immediately seemed disturbed or out of place. "I know you're there," Percy called out, stepping carefully into the entryway. "Show yourself." For several seconds, silence was the only response. Then, a soft voice spoke from the shadows near his small kitchen. "Ever vigilant. Good. You'll need that quality in the days ahead." A figure moved into the dim light filtering through the curtains, a woman of ageless beauty with auburn hair and silver-yellow eyes that seemed to glow slightly in the darkness. She wore modern clothing, jeans, a silver parka, and hiking boots, but carried herself with unmistakable divine presence. Lady Artemis. Percy recognized her instantly, lowering Riptide and bowing slightly. "I didn't expect a personal visit." The goddess of the hunt studied him with an expression that combined assessment and concern. "These are unusual times, Percy Jackson. Protocol must sometimes yield to necessity. You're the one Pontus warned us about. The arrival from the east at dawn." Artemis shook her head. "No, I merely precede it, moving through the weakening barriers to prepare the way." She gestured to one of his kitchen chairs. "May I?" Percy nodded, still processing her unexpected appearance. Of course, as Artemis sat, Percy capped Riptide and turned on a small lamp, casting the room in soft light. The goddess looked solid and real, not the dream projection she had used for their previous communication. Your communication with Annabeth Chase was interrupted, Artemis stated without preamble. She was attempting to warn you about what approaches. Something connected to both me and dragons, Percy recalled. That's all I gathered before the connection was cut. Artemis nodded. The interference came from those who would prefer you face this trial unprepared. Fortunately, they underestimate both you and your new allies. Quote, trial, Percy repeated, tensing at the term. What exactly is coming, my lady? The goddess's expression grew solemn. The guardian of Kuoh. Percy frowned, searching his memory for the reference. The dragon that guarded the Golden Fleece. But it was killed by the original Jason thousands of years ago. Its physical form was destroyed, yes. But its essence, its spirit, returned to the primordial darkness from which all monsters are born. Artemis leaned forward slightly. Now, with the barriers between realms weakening and the convergence approaching, it has found a path back to manifestation. Why here? Why now? Because of you, Percy Jackson. The goddess's silver-yellow eyes held his steadily. You retrieved the Golden Fleece. You bear the lingering essence of its magic. In the dragon's perception, you are both thief and inheritor, the one who took its charge but also assumed its purpose. Percy struggled to process this information. So it's coming after me. For revenge. Not precisely. Artemis hesitated, choosing her words carefully. The Guardian's purpose was never vengeance, but protection. It safeguarded the fleece because that was its function. Assigned by Ares and bound by ancient magic. But the fleece is safely at Camp Half-Blood, Percy pointed out. Protected by Talia's pine tree and the camp's magical borders. Indeed, which is why the Guardian's manifestation is complicated. Artemis rose, moving to Percy's window to gaze out at the night sky. It seeks not the fleece itself, but to fulfill its purpose through new means. The convergence has created possibilities that would normally be impossible. A dawning realization hit Percy. Issei. The Red Dragon Emperor. That's the connection. NSES another dragon with immense power that needs protection. Artemis turned back to him, a faint smile acknowledging his insight. The Guardian was bound to protect a golden artifact of immense power. Now it senses a new artifact with golden potential, the boosted gear in its wielder. So it's not coming to attack, but to, what? Serve as Issei's protector. That depends entirely on you, Percy Jackson. Artemis's expression grew serious once more. As the one who retrieved the fleece and awakened the Guardian's awareness in this new age, you have a claim on its loyalty. But so does the Red Dragon Emperor, whose power resonates with its own draconic nature. Percy ran a hand through his hair, trying to sort through the implications. So tomorrow at dawn, the spirit of an ancient Greek dragon is going to manifest here. And either attack me as a thief of the fleece, protect Issei as a fellow dragon, or, what? Take orders from me because I'm connected to the fleece. All are possibilities, Artemis confirmed. The outcome will depend on how you approach the Guardian. It is a creature of purpose and ritual, bound by ancient laws that predate even the Olympians. The proper words, the proper offering, could bind it to your service, or to the service of your cause. And if we get it wrong, then you face a manifestation of one of the deadliest dragons of the ancient world. Empowered by the convergence and the thinning barriers between realms. Artemis stated this matter-of-factly, without dramatic emphasis. Its physical form was formidable enough when the first Jason encountered it. Its spiritual essence, given new form through the convergence, may be even more dangerous. Percy absorbed this, mentally cataloging everything they had prepared. We'll be ready. Rias and Sona have established defensive positions. Issei has been training with the boosted gear. I've adapted my own abilities to work differently here. Good. Artemis moved toward the door. I've done what I can by warning you. Direct intervention would draw unwanted attention from other pantheons. The rest is in your hands. Wait, Percy called as she reached for the doorknob. You mentioned proper words, a proper offering. What did you mean? Artemis paused. The Guardian was bound through ritual. Blood of the summoner, bronze from Olympus, and words of purpose. The original ritual was performed by Ares himself. But as a son of Poseidon with celestial bronze in your possession, you have the necessary elements. And the words, those must come from your own understanding of the Guardian's purpose. Her hand rested on the doorknob. Consider what it means to protect, Percy Jackson. Not just to guard, but to serve a higher purpose through that guardianship. Before Percy could ask anything further, Artemis opened the door and stepped out into the night. A flash of silver light momentarily illuminated the hallway, and when it faded, the goddess was gone. Percy stood in his doorway for several moments, processing everything Artemis had told him. The Guardian of Kuoh, coming not necessarily as an enemy, but as a potential ally with its own ancient agenda. The Chal, Engi would be directing that agenda to align with their needs rather than conflicting with them. He pulled out his phone and sent a message to the group. Just had a visitor. Artemis herself. Know what's coming now. We'll explain everything in the morning. Meet at club room before classes. Responses came quickly. Acknowledgements from Rias and Sona, a string of exclamation points from Issei, a simple, understood, from Tsubaki. Percy closed and locked his door, then moved to his small desk. From his backpack, he took out a notebook and began writing everything he could remember about the Golden Fleece, the original Jason. And what little he knew of the dragon that had guarded the legendary artifact. If this confrontation would be determined by ritual and purpose rather than simple combat, he needed to be prepared with more than just fighting techniques. By the time exhaustion finally claimed him in the early hours of the morning, Percy had filled several pages with notes, ideas, and possible approaches. Whether they would be sufficient to face an ancient dragon's spirit empowered by a cosmic convergence remained to be seen. His last thought before drifting into sleep was a wry acknowledgement that, once again, his life had taken a turn toward the mythologically complicated. Some things, it seemed, remained consistent across pantheons. Dawn approached with agonizing slowness. Percy stood with Rias, Sona, and their peerages at the eastern edge of Kuoh town, on a hillside that offered a clear view of the horizon. They had arrived an hour before sunrise, establishing a defensive perimeter and making final preparations for whatever might emerge with the first light of day. Run through it one more time, Rias requested, her crimson hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her expression focused and determined. Percy nodded, summarizing what Artemis had told him. The Guardian of Kuoh is coming, the dragon that protected the Golden Fleece in ancient times. It's manifesting through the weakening barriers between pantheons, drawn by both my connection to the Fleece and Issei's draconic power. And it might be hostile or friendly depending on how we approach it, Issei added. The boosted gear already manifested on his arm. He'd been unusually serious since hearing the news, perhaps sensing the weight of his role in the approaching confrontation. The ritual components are ready, Sona asked, gesturing to the small altar they had prepared based on Percy's research and Artemis's guidance. As ready as they can be, Percy confirmed. On a flat stone, the Y had arranged the necessary elements. A small bronze bowl crafted from metal Rias had enchanted to mimic celestial bronze as closely as possible, a vial of Percy's blood, drawn earlier by Akino with surprising clinical efficiency. And Riptide, uncapped and gleaming in the pre-dawn light. I still don't understand why we're preparing a welcome ceremony for something that might try to kill us, Saji, one of Sona's peerage members, muttered from his position in the defensive formation. Because ritual has power, Tsubaki explained patiently. Especially with entities as ancient as this guardian. By acknowledging its purpose and offering a new charge, we potentially gain an ally rather than an enemy. If it doesn't work, we still have the combat strategy as backup, Rias added pragmatically. All pieces are in position. They had indeed prepared thoroughly. Kiba and Kaneko were positioned to flank any manifestation point. Akino hovered above, ready to provide aerial support with her lightning. Sona's peerage members maintained a barrier spell that would contain the area if combat became necessary. Issei stood slightly behind Percy, ready to boost his power if needed for either ritual or battle. The eastern sky began to lighten, the first faint glow of sunrise bleeding across the horizon. An unnatural stillness settled over the hillside, birds fell silent, the usual morning breeze ceased. Even the ambient sounds of the distant town seemed muted. It's starting, Sona observed, her voice barely above a whisper. The first golden ray of sunlight crested the horizon, stretching across the landscape toward them. As it reached the hillside, the light seemed to pool unnaturally, gathering intensity rather than dispersing. Percy stepped forward, approaching the makeshift altar. Everyone stay back unless I signal. This needs to begin as a one-on-one interaction. He could feel the tension radiating from his allies, their power gathered and ready, but they maintained their positions as agreed. Percy uncapped Riptide, the celestial bronze sword expanding to its full length, then placed it carefully beside the altar. The pool of golden light continued to intensify, now pulsing with a rhythm that reminded Percy of a heartbeat. The air above it shimmered like a heat mirage, warping and distorting as something began to take shape within the light. First came a massive serpentine head, emerging from the light as if pushing through a membrane between worlds. Scales the color of old gold caught the sunlight, gleaming metallically. Eyes like molten copper blinked open, vertical pupils contracting in the growing daylight. A forked tongue, surprisingly delicate given the creature's size, flicked out to taste the air. The head was followed by a sinuous neck, then powerful forelegs tipped with bronze-colored talons that dug into the earth as the creature pulled itself further into manifestation. Its body continued to emerge, a massive trunk covered in overlapping scales. Bat-like wings folded against its sides, and finally a long tail that ended in a cluster of barbs reminiscent of a scorpion's stinger. When fully materialized, the guardian of Kuoh stood. Before them, not as large as some dragons Percy had encountered, but radiating an ancient power that made the air around it shimmer with potential energy. It was beautiful in the terrible way of apex predators, perfectly designed for its purpose. The dragon regarded Percy with those molten copper eyes, its gaze intelligent and assessing. It made no immediate aggressive move, but its posture stead readiness for either peace or violence depending on what happened next. Percy took a deep breath, centering himself. Behind him, he could hear Issei's breathing quicken, the boosted gear humming faintly with response to the dragon's presence. Guardian of the Golden Fleece, Percy addressed it formally, speaking in ancient Greek rather than Japanese or English. The words felt right in his mouth, as if the language itself helped bridge the gap between pantheons. I am Perseus Jackson, son of Poseidon, retriever of the fleece in the modern age. The dragon's head tilted slightly, acknowledgement or perhaps surprise at being addressed in its native tongue. It made no vocal response, but its eyes remained fixed on Percy with predatory focus. Following the ritual Artemis had outlined, Percy picked up the small vial of his blood and poured it into the bronze bowl. I offer the blood of the sea god's lineage, acknowledging your ancient charge and purpose. The dragon's nostrils flared, catching the scent of divine blood. It lowered its massive head slightly, bringing its face closer to Percy's level, a gesture that required considerable restraint given their difference in size. Quote, your purpose was to guard a treasure of immense power, Percy continued, his voice steady despite the dragon's proximity. To ensure it remained safe until claimed by one worthy of its blessing. At the word, worthy, the dragon's gaze shifted momentarily to Issei, who stood his ground admirably despite the attention of the ancient predator. The boosted gear seemed to pulse more intensely, as if responding to the dragon's assessment. Percy picked up Riptide, holding the celestial bronze blade flat across his palms as an offering. I present bronze of Olympus, forged in the fires of the god's realm. As token of respect for your origin and power. The dragon extended its neck further, bringing its face within feet of Percy. Its tongue flicked out again, almost touching the celestial bronze blade. A deep rumbling sound emerged from its chest, not quite a growl, but a resonance that Percy felt in his bones more than heard with his ears. This was the crucial moment. Percy had spent hours considering what words would properly acknowledge the Guardian's purpose while redirecting it to their current needs. Now, standing before the manifested spirit of an ancient dragon, he hoped his instincts were correct. Guardian of Kuoh, your original charge is fulfilled. The fleece rests safely where it belongs, protecting a new generation of heroes as it once was protected by you. Percy spoke clearly, maintaining eye contact with the massive creature. But a new convergence approaches, a time when the barriers between realms thin and ancient powers stir once more. The dragon's rumbling intensified, its copper eyes gleaming with interest or perhaps recognition of the truth in Percy's words. I offer you a new purpose, Percy continued. Not to replace your old charge, but to fulfill it in a new way. Before you stands Issei Hyodo, bearer of the boosted gear, vessel of Ddraig, the Red Dragon Emperor. At the mention of Ddraig, the Guardian's head jerked slightly, its attention now fully on Issei. The boosted gear's jewel flashed in response, and Ddraig's voice emerged unexpectedly. We meet again, Ancient One. Many cycles have passed since our paths crossed. The Guardian made no verbal response, but its posture shifted subtly, recognition, perhaps even respect, for the entity housed within Issei's sacred gear. Percy pressed forward, sensing a positive connection forming. As I once sought the Golden Fleece to protect my home and people, now we seek to protect this realm from the chaos the convergence may bring. Will you lend your ancient power to this cause? Will you guard not just a treasure, but the balance between pantheons itself? For several tense moments, the dragon remained motionless, its copper eyes shifting between Percy, Issei, and the gathered devils behind them. The rumbling from its chest continued, changing in pitch and cadence like a language none of them could quite understand. Then, with deliberate slowness, the Guardian of Kuoh lowered its massive head to the ground in front of Percy, a clear gesture of submission or at least acceptance. The rumbling ceased, replaced by a sound like distant chimes as scales shifted against each other. Percy exchanged a quick glance with Rias, who nodded encouragement. Following instinct, he stepped forward and placed his palm against the dragon's snout, just above its nostrils. The scales were warm to the touch, vibrating slightly with the creature's breathing. Thank you, Percy said simply. The moment his hand made contact, a golden light spread from the point of touch, enveloping both Percy and the dragon in a brief flash. When it faded, a faint symbol glowed on the back of Percy's hand, a stylized dragon curved protectively around a fleece-like shape. Simultaneously, a matte, Qing symbol appeared on the Guardian's forehead, binding them in what Percy instinctively recognized as a pact of mutual purpose. The dragon raised its head once more, then did something unexpected. It turned toward Issei and repeated the gesture of submission, lowering its head to the ground before the bearer of the boosted gear. Issei looked to Percy uncertainly. Should I? Yes, Percy nodded. It's acknowledging its dual purpose, connected to both of us, the fleece through me, the draconic power through you. With remarkable courage for someone facing an ancient dragon for the first time. Issei stepped forward and placed his gauntleted hand on the Guardian's snout. Another flash of golden light, and the symbol appeared on the boosted gear's surface as well. The pact is sealed, Ddraig announced. The Guardian accepts its new charge, to protect the balance between realms during the convergence, with special attention to its bonded wielders. A collective exhale of relief SSED through the gathered devils as the tension of the moment broke. The Guardian of Kuoh straightened to its full height, wings unfurling slightly in what seemed almost like a stretch after long confinement. So, we have a dragon now? Issei asked, a hint of his usual enthusiasm returning. An actual, mythical, Greek dragon. Not exactly, Percy replied, studying the symbol on his hand. I think it's more like, we have its allegiance. Its spiritual essence has manifested here, but I doubt it can maintain physical form indefinitely across pantheon boundaries. Correct, Ddraig confirmed. The Guardian's manifestation requires significant energy. It will return to a dormant state until needed, accessible through the bond it has established. As if in response to Ddraig's explanation, the Guardian's physical form began to shimmer slightly, its edges becoming less distinct. The dragon made no sound of distress, rather, it seemed to accept this transition as natural. Before fully fading, it bowed its head once more to Percy and Issei, then dissolved into particles of golden light that swirled briefly around them before absorbing into the symbols on their hands and Issei's gauntlet. Well, Rias said, approaching now that the immediate encounter had concluded. That was more successful than we might have hoped. Sona joined them, adjusting her glasses as she studied the fading symbol on Percy's hand. A guardian spirit bound to both Greek and devil power. Unprecedented, but potentially invaluable given what we face. How do we call it back? Issei asked practically, examining his own gauntlet where the symbol remained faintly visible. If we need it, I mean. The bond allows summoning through combined will, Ddraig explained. When true need arises, focus your energies through the symbols, and the guardian will manifest. Beware, each manifestation requires significant power from both bonded wielders. Percy nodded understanding. Like most divine gifts, this one came with limitations and costs. So it's an emergency measure, not an everyday ally. Still, Akeno observed as she descended to join them, having an ancient dragon at our disposal, even occasionally, shifts the balance of power significantly. Which raises the question, Tsubaki interjected, ever practical, of how other factions will respond to this development. A Greek dragon spur. It bonded to both the son of Poseidon and the Red Dragon Emperor, operating in devil territory. It complicates the political landscape. Rias's expression grew thoughtful. We should inform my brother. As one of the Satans, he needs to know about any significant power shifts in our realm. And we should expect increased attention from other pantheons, Sona added. If the Guardian could cross the weakening boundaries, others will follow. Percy looked eastward, where the sun now sat fully above the horizon. The convergence Pontus had warned about was clearly accelerating. The Guardian of Sea, Ulchus, was just the beginning, the first of what might be many entities crossing between previously separated realms. We should get back, he suggested, suddenly aware of how drained he felt. The RIT, UAL and bonding had taken more energy than he'd realized. Classes will be starting soon, and we could all use some rest before we plan next steps. As they made their way back toward Kuoh Academy, Percy fell into step beside Issei, who seemed uncharacteristically thoughtful. You okay? Percy asked. Issei flexed his hand, the symbol on the boosted gear now barely visible. Yeah, just processing. A week ago I was just a normal high school student with normal high school dreams. Now I'm part devil, housing an ancient dragon, and bonded to another dragon spirit from Greek mythology.